So we're thinking.
And now you should be good, you're unmuted, people on there should be able to hear you.
And maybe this level, so if you're in your car, it's like, no, I'm not over there. It's not like.
I have it on YouTube, so as soon as I hear anything on YouTube, I'll know it's live.
I know. Our suggestion, they.
It smells. From reference.
This is, look at this, it says,
It's Wednesday Night Live.
that is, right, because you're not doing anything here, you're using that. But it still comes on. Right, okay, that's your microphone on,
That's $1,000.
this has to stay muted, and the volume has to stay off.
We was right yesterday, right? One of their offices was there. She was actually with our neighbor. Unfortunately,
Hey, John.
doctor, he was looking for a new patient.
Wassa, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I just wanna check that out, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
At a minimum, that makes sense, even.
Is that the right time?
For
Somebody to fall on to do it.
and say,
Sure, but-
let me see it this, let me see it at 6 feet.
Oh, see, I got her on this.
So
I
if
might
they
have to
put-
check down on him, but she's still doing that stuff there.
2 feet.
I don't know, so come up.
See?
So that.
She's on here.
Yeah,
Or anything else.
so she's not up there, she's not speaking.
Sorry. if there's-
Oh, okay, right. Oh, so she's open there.
Yeah.
Who's up there?
It'd be 6 feet.
What's that?
So, I mean, I think it's 8 feet.
Probably see it's a
Well, it makes sense to go over to the.
Oh, yeah.
One.
Yeah, I think it's.
smack
I
it.
completely agree. No,
We can see. Yeah. An area later in the houses, where one of the signs out on the Plymouth. There are two areas, there are several areas out there we can generate planter posts. If, you know, dig two.
Are we on yet?
Put
Yeah,
something
As far as
on.
I'm aware, I'm not hearing it as a Zoom yet, but.
Is that?
I got a name. Just look at it.
It's have a name.
Matt, Jack Cotton will be on Zoom, so you might wanna move over.
Okay, oh, by the way.
Is that right? Jack Cotton's gonna be on Zoom?
I think she's on Zoom.
She said, "Stick red." Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I think.
What's the flag? Big sign we have.
You're gonna wanna, make sure your camera's off
That's right.
and your, sound is also.
Join the audio.
So bottom left of you, turn the camera off.
Could be
up.
This, okay, it was on, cause I was seeing you up there,
I love.
and then make sure your audio's off.
Alright.
Alright,
Join.
then you're good on that one. Well, I still don't hear anything out of the Zoom, which I should have been hearing something by now.
Right, so that it gets dark.
I mean, on the YouTube.
Oh, really?
No, I thought we should be.
Happy to see it up there.
Say, hey, right after that sign, please.
I saw we got onto Zoom. We go to the YouTube.
Yep, we did. We're on YouTube, saying we're not hearing it.
You weren't very fast, but they told me about you.
Didn't even know they went.
And I think they're.
Don't blink, it's almost the first. You're also on the end.
The only way it's.
I'm going.
Oh, that's it.
So.
There we go, I'm hearing it now.
Oh,
It was my phone.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
No, I just didn't have the volume on my phone, that's why I wasn't hearing it. So yeah, you're all set, you're on YouTube right now, you're live streaming, I can hear you on there. So just make sure anyone who does connect to your Zoom in this room keeps their microphone off, or else you'll get that echoing and feedback, right?
I'm only gonna review it, consider
And you should be good.
So if someone wants to speak, they should go up here.
I mean, they should be able to stand over there, like even at the podium, you should be good.
Okay.
They may have to speak and project a little bit more, so if it's quiet, maybe they could stand up in front if you need to, but.
If you could sign the names and stuff like that, if you could, please.
Where's the mic?
The mic is right here.
Okay.
It'll pick up if you sing
I'm gonna
this.
feel, I'm gonna feel pretty comfortable sitting here.
Yeah.
I'd rather sit than stand.
You have no problem sitting, if you're talking a lot, you just do need to project for the
No
mic.
one has ever accused me of having a soft voice, ever.
Can you hear me?
I can hear. But it's not prepared.
I am planning on getting better mics for it, but as of right now, you do need to project.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Thank Jim,
Should be
the
all set.
IT person, for helping us out there.
Thanks. You're
Great job.
Anytime.
I mean,
All right.
Now tomorrow I'm gonna have to go and delete part of that YouTube to get rid of me off of it.
Right.
Alright.
All right, let's open the June 11th Board of Health meeting for Town of Millis. Take it a second.
Second. Let's check her. She's up here.
There I am. There you are. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What? All right, first up is the nurses report. Do we have?
Not on yet. He's way up tonight, though, I know that.
All right, we can't move to. Bring up the nurses report. Let's share my screen.
I can't do something on that.
Yeah, I don't see.
Johnson?
Just could go find Heather. What I call
Sure. One second. You got the agenda in our email, right? I can't find it.
Yeah, it was in a couple days ago.
Lot of stuff.
Yeah. I'll share the nurses report. Can't get it to share.
I can't get on Zoom yet. Oh, Garth will let me in.
Okay, hold on.
Pull it up here.
All right.
It's hard getting back, isn't it?
I have a piece of paper. I'm,
You know, I've got handouts. I haven't had handouts in years.
it's the technology that helps us out.
Yes.
Brought a different computer and now I can't get it to share my screen.
I don't know. The sheet of paper is working just fine.
Maybe I'll come out and go back in. All right. Figure it out. Don't worry. We'll get there.
It's gonna be on in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Open. My phone browser. Right. Not me again.
Oh, yeah.
Man, old. Okay. Browser.
People in the audience could sign in, please. You got a chance. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry. You asked me.
Sure.
Down. You need a phone number?
Not really, but if you can.
Sarah, are you on?
Waiting for Sarah, it's gonna be
She's
like
on
2
now.
minutes.
She's on
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I totally forgot the craziness of the end of the year and I totally forgot about it. I apologize.
No worries.
Are you ready for me?
Yep, we're all ready for you.
So just a little update. Not a whole lot going on right now. Measles cases are still rising. But I did read something yesterday saying that it seems like the large outbreak in the Southwest United States is kind of starting to level off a little bit, is what I read. So hopefully that continues in that direction. What else? As far as immunizations for recommendations for the fall, it sounds like the COVID recommendations will be changed for the fall to not include all anyone 6 months plus. It sounds like it's going to be recommended for anyone 65 plus, and then younger than that if you have a condition that puts you at high risk. I'm not sure how that will change with everything that's going on with the ACIP right now. So I think that's to be determined. There was a meeting scheduled for June 25th to 27th, but I'm not sure what the status of that will be at this point in time. Other things I've been working on, I did a presentation at the Council on Aging about just preparing for summer heat emergencies and signs and symptoms of dehydration and heat stroke. I'm looking into possibly doing a tick-borne illness presentation for them as well. We recently got from our shared service arrangement, they put together tick removal kits that we have now in our office that we'll be able to distribute. So we'd like to get the information out for that, but we can also give those out to the at the Council on Aging. They just have a little magnifying glass and some tweezers and some alcohol swabs. So we have that stuff in the office. We're working on doing summer camp inspections, getting those done. And that's pretty much it, I think. Oh, one other thing I'm looking into also, I don't know if they've ever been done in the past, but I was looking into starting some sort of wellness visit program for Millis residents. So I've been in discussion with a couple other public health nurses to see how if they do it in their communities and how they do it. But essentially, just a way for do a wellness visit. For example, if someone has a family member that lives in Millis, but they live out of town and want to check in and make sure that they are still, their house is safe, they are still able to live alone, those kinds of things. Hopefully starting some sort of program that I can go into the house and do a risk assessment, fall risk check, things like that. So that's something I've recently started working on, and to be determined when we are able to roll that out. But I've also talked to Anne Marie at the Council on Aging about how we can kind of work collaboratively on that program. I think that's it. Any questions?
Go ahead.
I have a question. For the wellness business, it sounds like a great idea. Do you have an idea of how many homes you might be dealing with, or just an estimate?
I have no idea, quite honestly.
All right.
Yeah.
It's, I personally, speaking for myself, I think it's a great idea.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Sorry I was late. I apologize.
All right, 6:15, 209 Pleasant Street, C for perk test approval. Who is here to present that?
I'm here. My name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. Even though I don't do a lot of work in Millis, I've done a number of septic systems with John in the past, maybe a half a dozen or so. One thing I realized while Sarah was doing her little presentation is I don't have that plan on this computer, so I can't share the screen with that because I'm on a different computer. But if you're looking at it, fine.
Wait, hold on. You were talking about the actual sieve test?
Yeah, so what it is, first of all, it's 209 Pleasant Street. So if you're heading away from Village Street towards like Norfolk, on Pleasant Street, after you go past Baltimore on your right, this is a little bit down the hill on Baltimore on your left, this is a little bit down the hill on your right side as you kind of go around a corner there. The soils here are Canton soils. So Canton soils are hydrologic group B, right? So soils go like A, B, C, D, with A being sand and gravel and D essentially being wetland soil. So these usually Canton soils have a fairly deep water table. We usually see more than 6 feet, and they usually have a pretty good perk rate, somewhere between 2 and 8 minutes an inch. But when John and I went out to do the soil testing at this location, the water table was sort of too high. It was way up in the sea layer, and so we couldn't do a perk test there. We did 3 holes with, I can just tell you, we had water at 40 inches, 36 inches, and 40 inches. So the water table was way too high to do a perk test. And the DEP, I'm going to guess 15 or 20 years ago, recognized that a lot of people trying to get their houses ready for sale in the spring run into a problem when you can't do a perk test. So they put together a policy. This is not the only time I've had to do it. In fact, I've had to do this twice in other towns, one being right here in Walpole this year. And so what we do is we take a sample from each test pit. Of course, John and I log the soils, but then we take a sample from each test pit. I bring it to Filch Engineering. They're a Boston engineering firm, but they have a lab that's in Cranston, Rhode Island. They actually bought, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, GZA's lab, if anybody knows who GZA is, but they're a big soil testing company. So Filch tests a lot of stuff. That's what they do. They're engineers, but that's one of their big things to do. I like to use them because, first of all, the guy who runs the lab is a professional engineer like myself, and they're very quick and they're very competent. So they came back, and where John and I thought one was sand and the other was loamy sand, they came back and said one was loamy sand and the other was sandy loam. And so what that translates into is essentially a 30-minute perk rate. So it's a 0.33 long-term acceptance rate, which is very conservative for the soil that John and I were seeing, I think. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's the data. That's what we have to live with. It translates into a leach field where there's 800 square feet is required, and we're providing 819 square feet. So what we designed was a system, because of the high water table, we've got a septic tank that we're raising up the plumbing in the house so that we have separation between the piping and the groundwater, and then a pump chamber, and then we're going to pump up into a Presby leach bed, which will have adequate separation between the bottom of the leach bed and the groundwater table that we saw. And I would just say this, and I've been doing, soil testing all along. The water table has been very high this year, and I believe at this site, even if we went out, tomorrow, probably still going to have a problem with doing a perk test here because the water table, and I can't explain exactly why. Usually Canton soils, the water table's a little deeper, but just in this site, it's pretty high. systems in the front yard, in the backyard, very low. I wouldn't call it wetlands, but very low in the backyard. So I think all of these houses along this little stretch have their systems in the front yard. So with that, I can answer any questions that you have. So let me just get to what we're asking for. So the part of Title V that requires the perk test is section 15104 and 15105. And so we're asking the board to allow the soil absorption system to be designed and constructed without a percolation test as allowed by DEP policy. And we're following the policy. That is, we're taking 2 soil samples, we're using the worst soil sample, and we are therefore using the long-term acceptance rate for sandy loam, which is 0.33, and it's based on 330 gallons per day. It's based on a 30-minute perk, not three. It's a 4-bedroom. It's a 4-bedroom house, so it's 440 gallons a day. But it's based on a 30-minute perk rate.
So Chair, can I talk to the engineer?
Yeah, go ahead.
It appears to me that a lot of boards have approved this over the state, right?
We do this. I wouldn't say this happens often, but I would say this happens with us 3, 4, maybe 5 times a year in the spring.
They've always approved it?
I've never had one not approved.
Okay.
And as I said, I take a very conservative approach to this. I use, believe me, a very good lab. I bring the samples there myself. We take a good sample. You saw it, John. We take a good large bag of soil that we bring to them so they have a good size sample to test. They do a great job. And so it's, they know it's the USDA sieve analysis that they look at. And then really the state, it's only, I think there's only 4 loading rates that they allow. It's 0.74 if you have sand, 0.66 if you have loamy sand, 0.33 if you have sandy loam. And if you have something other than that, like a silt loam, then it's 0.15. So as I said, it's for Canton soils, and even for these soils that we saw, I would have expected the perk rate to probably be closer to somewhere between 6 and maybe 10 minutes per inch. So this is a very conservative design. But it gets the owner what they want, and that is they have a buyer, because the buyer has been calling me. I think they're sort of interested in what's going on with this property.
Any other questions? Matt?
Not yet.
Decor?
I would add, oh, I'm sorry, Jake Porter.
Decor, any questions?
No, I'm still listening and learning, so thank you.
I would just confirm, I spoke to John, I believe, about this case as well, at your request. And it is unusual for Canton soils to have such a loamy sand, sandy loam rather. And it is a conservative design. And I personally think, from my review, it would exceed the requirements of the code. And it would provide a system that would meet the code requirements.
Thank you for that. We're being asked to give a waiver for the perk test and approve it. A variance, sorry, variance. Variance for the perk test. To do a sieve test in place.
Right, to allow the system to be designed and constructed without a perk test as allowed by DEP policy. That's the language that's in the request.
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Are you opposed to doing a perk test?
So we can't do a perk test because the perk test would have to be done in soil that's already saturated by groundwater. So it just, can't, water won't displace other water, right?
Mhm.
It's not going to move it through the soil. So
Mhm.
it puts the homeowner at a bit of a disadvantage where they would have to wait. And as I said, this year, because of all of the rain we've had every weekend, um, I doubt if the water table has dropped very much. We have a number of other sites where we're actually waiting to do perk tests. It's a little different. These are people who want to do ADUs, and they found that their water table's too high to do perk tests. So these sites, one's right in Rentham, one's right here in Walpole. The water table's still too high to do soil testing, percolation tests. Not in every type of soil, but in certain types of soil, especially ones like sandy loams that have a little bit more fines, a little bit more silt, a little bit more clay than a sand soil. We've been doing perk tests right along in the sandy glacial tills, but the other ones have been challenging. In fact, just last week I had perk like a B layer because we couldn't get a perk in a C layer. So it's just something that, and as I said, doesn't come up often. I've done 2 others this year with the board in Walpole, where person has a house sold, can't do the perk test because of high groundwater. So what the DEP did was put together this policy to allow the process to move forward.
If I can add one more thing, when I spoke to John, Mr. Glossa, another piece that's required by the guidance document is to determine the consistency of the soil in the field. Is it firm? Is it loose? Is it friable? And I believe you answered, when I asked you that, it was a friable soil or very friable. Am I not mistaken?
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
one of the holes, believe me, one of the holes was, John and I said it was sand. It came back loamy sand, but it had a lot of sand in it. The one that's the sandy loam is just missing the demarcation between loamy sand and sandy loam. It's like right on the line. But like I said, my experience, go conservative because you're not going to get in trouble that way. You're not going
And I would concur with that. I think going conservatively with those data and the fact that it's Canton soil parent material and the fact that it's not firm, it's somewhere friable or very friable. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it was loose, friable,
better.
loose.
If it was loose, even more so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was loose. It was not compacted. It was loose.
And it is.
Yeah.
So,
It makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? All right. So can I get a motion to grant a variance to allow the septic system at 209 Pleasant to be designed without a perk test as outlined by the DEP Title 5 310 CMR 15.104 and 105? Can I get a motion?
You made the motion.
Okay, motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
All set? It passes?
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, John. And thank you, Ethan. Okay, good
Very
night.
much. Good night.
Okay. 6:30, we got 1 whole minute to wait to 6:30.
I've got a quick question. When we do that sort of action, does there need to be anything noted on the deed?
I don't know if they do.
Do you notice for a variance?
Yeah. No,
Yes, you do.
for the, I think they do for.
As long as the system meets telephones.
I don't think so, not for that. You would put a
Yeah.
deed variance, let's say, a deed notification for something like, right, garbage disposal or something like that, but not for this.
Now, what about the Presby? They don't have to put that on?
Not
there?
anymore.
Not anymore, okay.
Okay.
All right, 6:30. Next agenda item is the Regency at Glen Ellen Pool. Who's here to present about the pool?
Good evening.
All right, we got the floor.
My name is Bob Schelmerdine. I'm a unit owner at Regency of Glen Ellen. I'm also on the Rules and Regulations Committee. With me tonight, we happen to have all 5 trustees. We have 2 brand new trustees that were elected very recently. Mr. David Golden, Dennis O'Donnell, John Stedman, Carol Maloof, and Deb Canton are here. In addition to myself, I have Larry Hirsch, who's the chair of our Rules and Regulations Committee. So we last met on April 23rd, and at that time, the board took action in part and tabled action in part. This is actually the first live hearing I've had in quite a while, so I actually have handouts. So I'd like to, if I could just submit those. There are 2 of them there. There's one there to go. This is the chart that we had prepared. I do have additional handouts. I'll hand those out as we go. So, Mr. McVeigh, that the chart that I know you put it on the screen last time.
Yes,
So if you can put it on for Mr.
Yeah.
LeBlanc, so I can go over it real quick.
yeah, just, let's see right there. Let's see.
While we're finding that, I'm gonna do this also. One of these out, and I'll talk about that second.
Is that it? Yeah, it's like that. So,
I can quickly summarize if you want me to, or we can wait.
I'll speak on the headphones
Sure.
right now, so.
No problem.
Coming. There it is.
Yes. Yep, that's all of it. Okay, so on April 23rd, what was approved by the board, these are the requests that we've made. What was approved by the board was, and I thank you very much. I think it was Mr. Fuller, Mr. McVeigh, who remembered this. If you look at the column that says 2025 same as 2024, that whole column was approved. That allowed us to open in June, and the request was the same as we did for 2024. So for from June to August, the first row there is non-peak hours, 8 to 10 in the morning. No lifeguard, no guests. So we are actually open in a period of time, both peak, non-peak AM. The bottom row is non-peak PM. And we are open, our pool is open during those hours without a lifeguard. The residents can swim in the swimming pool, have to have at least 2 people in the pool at all times if they're gonna swim during those times. But no guests. So no adult guests and no children. So that's what was approved. What was tabled, and we're here tonight on this continuing hearing, is real simply, if you look at the top, there's verbiage, reasons for substitution of a pool attendant. So the first request that we are making, and are making again tonight, is number 1, early and late season, May and September. And this request is represented by the 2 columns underneath proposed request, you'll see on the chart. So what we'd like to do is, once again, if you look at the rows, we are asking to be open from in May and in September, asking to be open from the non-peak AM, 8 to 10, the non-peak PM, 6 to sundown, without a pool attendant or a lifeguard. That's same for the PM hours, without a pool attendant or a lifeguard. And that just tracks what we're allowed to do from June to August. The real difference here is that it's that middle time period, the peak time period from 10 to 6. And this is probably a refresher, but I'm trying to just refresh everybody's memory on where we are. We would like to, during the early season, which we believe is May, and the late season, which is September, we would like to be able to substitute what we call is a pool attendant. The known pool attendant is in CMR. We've kind of added some additional discussion and language, but the first request that we're making, we spent 50 minutes at our last hearing. We did spend a long time with this. First request is that we be allowed to use a pool attendant in the place of a lifeguard. I had provided, this is the third handout, I had provided what the CMR calls for a definition, pool attendant, but then in paragraph 8, I had provided what we believe to be very reasonable and really very safe pool attendant duties. We've defined it. It's not defined in CMR. But what we're trying to do is, it's very difficult to get lifeguards. It's somewhat difficult to get lifeguards in the summer. We rely on either high school kids or college kids, and that pool of talent is not around and available to us during the May and September. They're in high school or college. So what we've done is we've defined pool attendant duties and responsibilities. We've defined qualifications. I believe we talked about some of this at the last hearing, but I think we've defined, I can go through them if you want me to. I'm presuming that you read them at least the first time and maybe now. And so hopefully, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to. But what we're really trying to do is provide adult supervision at the pool, eyes on the pool. We want somebody to be able to check people in, make sure they sign in. We have a sign-in qualification. There are certain things they shouldn't be doing, running around the pool, chemical testing, just a general understanding. Now that would be with guests. So we already have the ability in non-peak morning, non-peak evening to have the pool open without guests. We're trying to allow for those shoulder months to be able to have a substituted pool attendant or a lifeguard. And there will, because we have an adult presence, we would like to be able to have guests. There's one more request. We can go to 2 if you want me to. If you want to have a discussion about that first request, we can have that. Or if you want me to just summarize the second request, I can do that as well. Madam Chair, how would you?
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay, that's fine. So let me just point out that there was a discussion, I'm talking about the hours now. There's a little chart here that I've got the hours. We do extensive surveying. We have facilities committee. Mr. Guy Caputo is also he's not here tonight, but we do have him. He's part of our facilities. He's the chair of our facilities committee. And he does, we have sign-in charts, and so we know what the attendance is at any given time. We had a conversation about the number of people that would be swimming at the pool at any given time. We actually had that information and I just couldn't find it at the time. But this, I did provide other numbers in the previous memorandum that I had submitted, but this shows, it's a comparison between 2024 and 2023. This shows a breakout. Back in 2023, we didn't have a non-peak hours, so these are all just peak hours. 10 to 11, 11 to 12, on down the line. So for 2024, you can see the last row is total. It's broken up between residents, minor guests, and adult guests. But you can see that the total is, it started out at 7.1, it rises to 14.4, 19.1, 22, and 26. So this is a pool that's 2,570 square feet. It's a fairly decent sized pool. We do have a lifeguard chair that's positioned in the middle, but apart from kind of the action, so they'll be attentive to the needs. We do have a bather load of 171. I know that we had some kind of in-depth conversations with Mr. Mascoop at the last hearing. We have only one lifeguard, so the recommendation in CMR is that that one lifeguard should be able to have no more than 25 people in the pool at a time. That's the upper limit. We don't yet have a sign. I know that was a question, but the trustees have committed, in fact, to establish a sign. We have a whole bunch of signs that were reviewed and approved in the last several years. We're gonna add one more, limit of 25 swimmers in the pool at any time. So not only will the swimmers, the guests know, but also the lifeguard and or the pool attendant will know. So I think that this is an average, but I think you can see that there's only one time block there that we have on the average more than 25 people. And those aren't swimmers, because we've got a whole bunch of deck chairs. There's a really nice chair arrangement around the pool. A lot of people come down and sun themselves and dip in the pool for a quick period of time. So that's why, and pretty much the length and breadth of it. I think there was some sentiment at the end of the last time we were here, saying that
let us discuss it and then we'll.
I'm sorry?
Let's discuss it and we'll figure out point one and then we'll move on to point two.
Sure, fine.
Do I have any questions from the board on point
Sorry,
one?
still unclear on what point 1 versus 2 is.
Having a pool attendant versus a lifeguard in the months of May and September.
Okay. Oh, it's on here as
Yeah.
1 and 2.
Yes.
That's the ask.
Sorry.
Can use a pool attendant for May and September. Use a lifeguard for June, July, August.
I had questions about the pool attendant qualifications. How would you verify the ability to, this is probably gonna sound silly, but I do think you need an ability to verify how to swim, knowledge of pool safety, and their ability to perform CPR and first aid.
So.
And sorry, and I asked that because it says having the CPR and first aid certificate is preferable, not required.
Sure. So we have a management company, Barcan. They're on site. We have, there's a manager and an assistant manager. So we have 2 people in the office all the time. They do our hiring, our reviewing of our lifeguards. They will in fact do our hiring and reviewing with these qualifications. As they have done, they're very professional in what they do. They'll continue to do. They're also the pool supervisor actually, which is the highest form, but they will be doing the interview and coming up with this checklist and making sure that each person that applies is qualified. Not, won't be able to be employed.
Do you have a say in what the duties, responsibilities, and qualifications would be, or is that solely in the hand of the management company?
Well, first of all, we've prepared a list of what we think their duties and responsibilities should be and what their qualifications are. I think that we think this is pretty good. we are certainly willing to listen to any suggestions that the Board of Health has to add or delete any of these. But we will be telling the trustees, there are 5 trustees here. There's only 5 trustees in the 324 units, and they're all in attendance tonight. The 5 trustees will be dictating to the management company.
Okay, so that answers the question.
Yes.
They sort of have to do the same.
Oh, yes, oh, yes. Oh, yes, the management company has to do, they've got a contract with this, but they're in the house, they're in-house, 5 days a week, so.
Two more questions, if that's okay. One, just because I'm curious, the lifeguards now, are they all over 18?
I don't know the answer.
I only ask because you have high school diploma required, and I'm not so sure that matters.
Okay,
Just throwing it out there.
yep, no, I understand.
But I do think it would make sense to have CPR and first aid certification as a requirement.
So,
Or you could be required to train the person that gets hired and get them CPR and first aid.
Yeah, that
certification.
would also be,
Yeah.
sure.
sure, I think the reason why we have the high school diploma, I think it was the mindset of, we have a pool committee also, there's 5 of us.
I gotta ask, how many committees do you guys?
No,
have?
there's more than.
Too many.
One of the figures of laughter, social, facilities, finance, rules and regs, it goes on and on and on. But I think the reason why we put the high school diploma or equivalent, and I think that we thought that a pool attendant would be not necessarily requirement, I guess, but we thought that the pool attendant would be a little bit older than maybe the lifeguards. The lifeguards that we have are all trained lifeguards, they've got their certificates, they tend to be college, they tend to be some high schoolers. They had a couple of high schoolers and college students,
So
so.
that makes sense. I was only thinking you don't limit your pool of applicants unless you need to.
Yeah, okay, well, that's,
That's up to you guys.
I can strike that. Sure.
That's all I had.
Jakor?
Yeah, so I'm on mass.gov looking at what the state of Massachusetts requires in terms of the qualifications for lifeguard versus a pool attendant. And it's not very helpful because well, actually, what the mass.gov has lifeguard positions, and then they have lifeguard 2 positions, which sounds like it's what you're asking for in terms of a pool attendant. Because mass.gov lists pool attendants as I'm trying to get pool attendants are the people that responsible for greeting pool visitors, keeping track of number of people at the pool, emptying trash, cleaning restrooms. So the equivalent at mass.gov for what you're calling a pool attendant is that they're at least 18 years old, have at least 1 prior season of lifeguarding experience, working in a pool as a safety agent, possess already certification in American Red Cross lifeguard management, as well as, said preferably also certification as a American Red Cross lifeguard instructor. So I'm just trying to get kind of what is, how should I put it? What are the boundaries for qualifications that are differential between a lifeguard and a pool attendant? And I think that's not a bad list for what mass.gov calls lifeguard 2, but it seems like it's what you're calling a pool attendant. Would be that there's prior experience with being at a pool and serving as a safety person, serving in that role of safety at the pool, as well as already having CPR that doesn't have to be scheduled like halfway through the summer. Because I think it's, I'm looking at this chart and I just want to say first, to give a shout out for, the way you present information is great. It's very readable, it's useful. But you're making 2 significant jumps between season and early and late season. The significant jump, 2 significant jumps. One is that you're going to only pool attendants where there's lifeguard, and that you're also allowing where there's a pool attendant that there's guests. So it's versus just residents. So for me, that chart is essentially, and I don't know if this is what you mean by the let's take it one agenda at a time, but you're asking for two significant shifts in what you know, the early season and the late season. So for me, that pool attendant would have to be robust to kind of balance out the fact that you're asking for two significant, my word, gives from our traditional requirements for pool attendants / lifeguards. Does that make sense what I said, or do you have a question about what I said?
Go ahead.
Unless anybody else, if I may respond,
You can answer her.
thank you. Bob Schulmerding. I guess maybe we shouldn't have used the word pool attendant. I chose the word pool attendant because there's a reference to a pool attendant in CMR. I think the problem that we're having is that outside of June, July, and August, it's difficult to find somebody that is as qualified as a lifeguard. So we believe that we're gonna have to drop down a bit. The lifeguard 2 that was just described by Ms. LeBlanc sounds to me like it's just, it seems that it's the same laden with what the lifeguard has. We've already defined said CPR. I guess prior experience would certainly be benefit. And so we are asking for something less than a lifeguard. We are asking for guests as well during that period of time. So I understand when Ms. LeBlanc says there's two significant shifts. Somewhat down a level from a lifeguard, we're thinking about eyes on the pool. I remember in most of the hearings we've ever had, Ms. LeBlanc kind of drumming into us, she wants eyes on the pool, and that made a lot of sense to us as well. I don't know that we can do that lifeguard number 2, at least the way that I heard it. So we are asking for CPR, first aid, I suppose prior experience in pool management. It'd be something that we could probably add to our list, and that could shape it. Don't know whether we're gonna be able to get somebody who was qualified at one time in their life as a lifeguard. That's kind of what we're, running up against. So I don't know whether that addresses your concerns or questions, but.
Well, I think what I was saying is, and by the way, the lifeguard itself position actually has you actually have to take a lifeguard course through YMCA or Boston Swim Association in Massachusetts, plus be certified in first aid, plus certified in CPR. So the lifeguard position is a more rigorous position than the mass.gov version of what you're calling a pool attendant, which is prior experience with water safety, as well as certified CPR training. So there's definitely a less robust requirement to be a pool attendant / lifeguard 2. But, I guess, and not that this is going to come out sounding strange, for me, when you have guests, that means that you're agreeing as a resident to, in some ways, look out for those people because they are your guests. Whereas a resident, is making the choice to come into a pool without somebody who could necessarily pull them out of the water and, take care of them. Thus, the CPR to me is a requirement before they get hired, not like halfway through the summer when a course becomes available. So, but I don't think it's inappropriate to say, hey, do you have any experience working at a pool and doing something other than stacking chairs? I think that's not an unreasonable ask for an experience for the kind of position you're putting that person, that pool the pool attendant in, which is looking out for people, both residents and their guests. And I think that's where I am, which is I understand the desire to use a pool more often. I love swimming, I get it. But I also think that opening it up to 2 significant shifts means you have to be robust in that safety element still. And that's my opinion. That's my view of it. There's 2 other board members, that may or may not have, varying degrees of difference with me. So, I feel like I've given my view on this airtime. I'd like to hear from the other 2 board members.
I think
Permit me to just respond. Ms. LeBlanc, would you feel more comfortable if for May and September through non-peak and peak, if we did not allow any guests? So we know that we're able to have no lifeguards even June through August in off-peak, as long as we don't have guests, no lifeguard, and no guests. If we shifted our request and dropped and took out, so right now it's the column, it's the proposed request, early season May, late season September. It's the peak time where we've asked for a pool attendant and allowing guests. If we take out guests during that peak, eliminating one of the 2 jumps, would you feel more comfortable?
Yes, because again, it takes out that you're putting, quote unquote, my quotes, air quotes, at risk, people who are guests versus residents who residents talk with each other. Residents kind of know each other. So there's a little bit more of a known factor if you're just engaging residents only versus guests who may or may not understand that, what kind of safety attendant there is. So again, that's me personally. As a board member, yes, that would make a difference for me.
I believe the trustees would consider that.
I just had a couple questions. Can you remind me how deep this pool is at the maximum depth?
Yeah, I think,
One spot.
yeah, so, yeah, so there's, it's a pool that's shaped this way and it's got a little bit of a bubble here. At the ends, it's probably 2 feet and then it stairs up, 1.5 feet and then stairs up. Over on this side, see, it is better when you can meet, right?
I agree.
My wife tells me I can't speak if I sit on my hands.
I'm watching the.
I know. So on this side, there's a bank, there's this big
Just generally, like just
triangle.
like a general, how deep is it at the deep?
5 feet in the middle.
5 feet?
5 feet in the middle.
Okay, that's all I
I was
want.
waiting for him to
Very
get to that
small.
point.
Okay, that's all I want. Okay.
And a very.
How many children live in this community
None.
that are not residents?
None.
Okay,
Don't
so it would only be
55.
guests, children only be guests.
Children will only be
Okay.
guests, so if we eliminate guests, we eliminate children.
Okay,
Width of the 5 feet area is only 5 feet. And the center. of
5
the
feet
pool.
by 5
So it's-
feet.
Right, so it's 5 feet deep,
Okay.
5 feet across, and then from the
Take-
center to
okay.
each end where the staircases are, it graduates down to 18 inches where the steps are, and goes to that.
Right. It's a short width of 5 foot goes on.
Jaikark expressed what I was thinking, which is, I think that we want to make sure that, we all agree on whatever noun you use, pool attendant, whatever, that we agree on, what those qualifications should be. And then I felt the same as if there are no guests allowed and you guys want to take on that risk, then, sure.
Okay,
So that's how I would feel about it.
great. Thank you.
I don't know if a pool attendant would be trained to recognize drowning, because drowning can be quiet. It's very fast and it's very quiet, and I don't think they would be the training to do it.
Right,
So that'd be my fear for like children in that pool.
right.
Adults, they're probably all over 5 feet, they're not gonna drown. So,
I mean, you can, but
So we,
I feel like it's easier to not see a child than it is
Yeah.
for a person
So
that
we
you're
will-
probably talking to.
we will officially change our request to May and
Yes.
September, no guests. At any time, and a full attendant between 10 to 6.
Yes. And I would just add, I think if that is approved, whatever motion we make, we'll like put.
Mhm.
Let's say we'll codify the duties, responsibilities, qualifications, that way it's really
Part of
clear.
the license.
Yeah.
Part of the vote.
Okay, that's all.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Bob, and I enjoyed watching. I agree with everyone. I'm listening very carefully. I also respect the fact that, it's hard to find lifeguards on the off season. It's even hard to find them during the season. And that's very clear. But I just want to remind the board that when there's a pool attendant there, not a lifeguard, there still will be a sign, a prominent sign that will be saying there's no lifeguard.
Yes,
So that's, assuming the guests read, and they understand what the sign says, that's, they're gonna be their obligation, so there should be no assumption that the pool attendant is somebody who will save a life. Is not a lifeguard, and that should be very clear. And I would imagine the sign will say such things as the time when the pool is open, there's no lifeguard, and then you swim at your, according to the. Yeah, exactly.
we can probably change out the signs. May, there will be a sign, no lifeguard. And, then we do have a sign that says no lifeguard, but the time it's required for the peak, non-peak hours now. And it's required by the statute, so, we can just, take a sign and eliminate the hours and post it in May and September.
And I would support, Matt, what you said, and that is, it has to be very clear in your motion what it is, because those are the provisions, those are the conditions of the permit.
Right.
So that any inspector can go in there and know exactly what they're inspecting.
Yeah, and also so they know what they're agreeing to, so it's
Exactly.
fair to them.
I think changing number one to be pool or to be just residents only kind of feeds into section 2 or request 2. Late
I'm
absence
sorry,
time slots.
I apologize to interrupt.
Yeah.
And I've been handed a note. There is a possibility, if there is a possibility to, on the shoulder seasons. So May, and I believe this would be okay. On the shoulder seasons, May and September, if during a weekend, we can actually find lifeguards, I presume that if we have a lifeguard, we can then have guests. Because that's the normal course of things, so maybe, and I'm not sure that needs to be in the minutes because there are the note, because it's so self-evident, if you have a lifeguard, then you have the ability to have guests, so. Just make that additional note, thank you.
John, do we have to remind us, I have not done pools in a long time. The department would normally review the lifeguard qualifications before the lifeguard is hired, is that right?
Yeah, we have the identification.
All that stuff, right,
Right.
yeah. So let's say you were to have a lifeguard just for weekends or occasional weekends, we would still need to have prior notice so that the office can actually review those qualifications.
Sure, email notice would be fine, I would imagine.
But again, that's if they approve that.
Okay, sure.
Qualification.
No, the company you have now, he does a lot throughout the state. And they have a lot of lifeguards.
Are you talking about Barkham, our management company?
They actually have some other company that does the lifeguards,
Who files
the
the
COP,
application?
The pool company.
The pool
full
company?
company, right?
Okay, that's
And they're very good. They do a lot around the state. So
Great.
I know that they have a lot of
Okay.
lifeguards.
great.
So we're changing our request to, with the use of a pool attendant in the place of what? of a lifeguard during May and September for the Glen Ellen pool for the 2025 season. No guests will be allowed as long as a pool attendant is present. If a lifeguard is present, guests can be allowed.
Right.
And proper signage must be hung
Yep,
in a visible location for all entering the pool.
right.
Is that the request?
I think so, but I believe
Yes.
they need to go back and have a discussion with their board or
Yeah.
whatever before, and there's not really, and correct me if I'm wrong, a rush to do this right now. I'd almost, I'll propose to you that you guys go back, talk about it, make sure that the community agrees. And then when we come back, we can have it all written out, so we're not cobbling it together tonight.
Yeah. That'd be
And if I may add,
Yeah.
the definition of a pool attendant needs to be added.
Yeah.
A clear, concise.
Yeah. I guess you have all the trustees here, like at the mini meeting, but
Well, we've actually had. I hesitate to even say this because I don't wanna give away, the inner workings here. We've actually had the trustees have actually had conversations on a number of,
right, on the scenarios.
on a number of lesser included charges, on a number of lesser included issues. I believe where trustees are fine with removing guests during the peak season for May and September.
And I know Jacquard didn't get to respond to this second part, but I would just say for myself. Lifeguards are present, I'm comfortable with guests being there. May to September, I mean, those bookends don't really change what we agreed upon in the middle of the 5 months.
I
Right.
think it's wording, how we word it.
Yeah, we just wanna make sure we word it really clearly.
Can I ask a question then too? Would that also include even the other times, let's say during June through August? Let's say they have a lifeguard in the non-peak or non-peak AM, non-peak PM?
That's a good point.
Just give them that flexibility.
We should, yeah, if we could.
They've gone all the
word it
way
right-
through this.
If we could word it in a way that is clear, I would be comfortable with that, because I think in my mind, that's what it's come down to. Lifeguard guests, no lifeguard, only residents.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. I must not. Can you just repeat that?
I'm trying to give you more flexibility. So in other words, let's say you happen to be able to
I
hire.
agree.
So if you look up there where you see non-peak, right, he's suggesting if you could get lifeguards then.
If you happen to hire a lifeguard, let's say for the month of July,
Yeah,
for the full, full time, when the pool is open the entire time, you could take away that restriction of no guests.
okay. So put lifeguards in the non-peak.
We'll add it as a possibility.
Okay.
No lifeguard, no guests, lifeguard guests.
I mean, it makes it's a switch. It's a binary switch. Lifeguards, guests, no lifeguards, no guests, or pool attendant, no guests.
Why don't we
It's just
do it for today and then we'll discuss it tomorrow. You guys can discuss amongst yourselves.
Okay,
We'll come up with good, better wording and then we'll.
But I think that flexibility. makes
Yeah.
sense.
We could do it in August.
No, there's nothing special about that time, other than the fact.
I know, we've often.
Take out the May, September, just say if you have a lifeguard, guests, no
Right,
lifeguard, pool attendant, residents only. And come back next time.
It gives you more things
Once you guys
it gives you
figure
more
it out.
time to meet more. Have all this time.
when do you meet, you just meet once a month?
We've been meeting twice a month.
Depends.
Yeah,
It depends what you guys.
When is your next board meeting? 2 weeks?
I don't think we've said yet, have we?
That's a tough one.
Sometime in July,
Trying to say 2 weeks.
who knows?
I will.
it'll be before September.
Usually a Monday, but
It's before.
You're right, but, memories sometimes fade and I wanna
Okay.
strike while later and so that.
I don't think we set one. Did we?
I don't think we have those,
I'll call you when we get one.
but yeah, we can let you know, it would be.
Yeah.
I do have 1 or 2 trips in July, but we should be able to make it work.
I'm away the last 2 weeks. This way last 2 years.
What about, is the 30th of June work? It's a Monday?
Yes. I don't know if we can get this one, the 30th.
We get this is.
Well, the first, July 1st,
Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday?
We don't have to explain this. We can kind of
We could do it completely virtually if it's 1 or 2 agenda items.
Right.
So this is one. Wells. Regulation. So we can do the one just. PCW.
That's what it is.
All right, okay.
I know there's a schedule.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. We'll table the pool for next time, which may be the first week of July.
Yeah. I think
We'll
that's-
figure out a time. We'll let you know a
yeah,
time.
that'll be reasonable.
We did have a second
Okay.
request, but it's gonna blend into.
Yeah.
We don't really need to talk about, I don't think we need to talk about that tonight. It's gonna blend into
Sounds like
this
if we do this,
binary choice of.
yes,
um,
pool attendant lifeguard,
Lifeguard guests, pool attendant notices. So,
fair enough.
Greg, did I hear June 30th?
No, we're trying to figure out a
Yeah, it would
date.
probably be June 30th or July
Rob.
1st.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of those two.
Even if it's just like this topic or something, well, I don't want to answer for you. actually.
Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes we are a little too informal, I guess.
Well, what time? Oh, 7 o'clock. Late.
As a. Can I
Alright.
saw my hands? As a, we would probably, with the, permission of the board, we would probably work up the definition of what we believe a pool attendant to be now. And since it's no guests, I think we may have a little bit of latitude, but it'll contain, most of everything here and certainly the other suggestions that have been made here as well. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. All right. See you next time then.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, 7:30? Wait, 7 o'clock, Regency Glen Ellen irrigation well and pond. Okay, who's here to present for the irrigation and well and pond? Begin.
Good evening, Ted Merchant, Land Development Director with Toll Brothers, and take care, local council.
Regulations, all right. Concerning the. Is anyone? I can't share my screen anyway. So there is an application to use a well before the Board of Health, that's. Find it.
There's nothing in that.
It's in the wrong
Yeah,
folder.
actually, irrigation well.
Just- So the first issue is the application for using well one, that was still before the board,
Correct.
all right. Irrigation well. Still can't share my screen. Application.
Okay.
Just after the fact, permitting of a well that's presently there. Well, number one,
Sure, I mean, I can go through a little bit of a history, right? We'll begin from the beginning. Toll Brothers purchased, the Glen Ellen Golf Course, back in 2017. That golf course had, two active wells on site, including the one that we're discussing tonight.
They utilize that well for golf course irrigation. And we intended to reuse it. We even permitted it through this board as reuse of the existing irrigation wells. I believe you commented on it as to ensure that they're non-potable. And we used them for approximately 2 years, from 2021 to 2023, at which point we installed a new well pump in 2023. Realizing now or later down the road that required a permit, we didn't know that at the time, so we have retroactively applied for that permit. And that's what's before you now. The irrigation system in general has been in place since probably 2021. This pump itself has been in place since 2023, and has been active, successful without major issue. So we're before you with that permit application, sort of dating back to, I guess, 2023.
I'm sorry, just,
Yeah, I think later, but yes.
I have a clarification question.
Yeah, sure.
And that is the actual system itself, the spray irrigation, all of the piping and all that is from 2021?
Yes, I mean, it get built over time, right? But initially started up in 2021. And it has expanded as we built units and. I couldn't tell you how many in 2021 to call it half of the community. And then as people moved in, we extended to their homes.
So it's not the system that the golf course had, in other words,
The call it water extraction portion is what the golf course used. They used a well, they used an irrigation pond, and they used pumps to pump it out. We then changed the distribution system coming out of that building.
just wanted that clarified.
Yep.
Good question. Now, do we have, excuse me, can I ask a question? Did we have questions, Ethan, regarding the PFAS and the, what is it, the other one? You had
For testing?
Testing.
I think, well, I think
Was,
there's,
pesticides
if
and
I,
then the bacteria, the three items that were.
I guess my,
Record.
I want to jump ahead, I'm looking at the chair. And that is, I think really what's in front of the board right now, at first, is just the modification, just some of the regulations themselves, not specific to.
Nothing to do with regulations, just the well and the irrigation pond. That's the permit, I'm not finding, but
So not the updating of the regulations yet.
no.
Right.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no,
Then
they
I was
want to use a
confused.
pump, the irrigation, pump. And well, I can't find the application. I know you turned in an application.
I know we did too. It was
Yeah.
probably
Been a while.
9 months ago at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been
all-
a while. It's been a while. I'll make that, something like.
Are there? I know there was. It was just
I
permission to
guess
use
to-
the well in the pump. Or,
The application was to install a new pump in the already existing well, in the already existing irrigation system. So the only change is the new pump. We had also submitted an application for a new pump in an existing well. Well number 2, which I think we could probably take a backseat on for now, but we submitted a second application. In an existing well to install a new pump in that well also. And I believe that was kicked back because you wanted to discuss this first one first, though I don't know that I understand the reasoning behind that, but let's proceed with well 1 before we get to well 2.
okay, well, one. There's a,
That's the one with the pond attached to it, right? Well, one.
Well 1,
They both do, don't they?
well 1,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
well 1 does
Right.
out of a well casing distribution system into an irrigation pond that was existing from the golf course. And then there is a separate pump system adjacent to the irrigation pond that then distributes that water throughout the community. For clarification, well number 2, which we also applied for, would pump in a similar fashion from that
The pond.
existing well to the irrigation pond and then distribute. It's more used as a backup.
So number 3 doesn't work at all, you're saying?
We
Which one?
did drill well number 3, which you permitted in fall. That would have done the same thing that these other ones are talking about. That only drew 10 gallons a minute, and we chose not to use that because the other one, well, one draws 100 gallons a minute and well 2 draws 60 gallons a minute, so 10 pales in comparison to those things.
And it's, they're fixed by a well driller, the pumps, right?
Yes,
Okay,
Skillings, who
Okay,
submitted the application, installed the pumps. Is a well-known well driller.
So members of the board, cannot find the application, but did we have any issues with the application for a pump being operated in Glen Ellen? A well pump? An irrigation system being used?
So
What was the concern that stopped this?
the quality of the water.
Water quality.
This, application.
If it's from Lake.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, well, exactly, yes, right.
No,
So, I think, to be honest, I don't remember all that we've debated because it's been quite lengthy and I'm sure you guys feel the same. My understanding of it is that the way that the regulations are written right now, it approves for the use of domestic use water. Domestic use water is a pretty wide definition and they meet that. In my opinion, we are bound as of now to approve it. Now, that's just my opinion. And that to me is separate from the discussion we've had of adapting or updating those well regulations, but I think
Yeah.
what is before us, that to me is what is fair, I would say.
What can I, yes, as well. You had talked to me, I talked to you the other day, Ted, and 65,000 was being used. 65 to 85,000 gallons per day were being used. And you got 100,000 from the state DEP. Right?
That's not fact, so I'll go through that. The state regulates water withdrawal up to, past 100,000 gallons a day on average, rolling average over a
Per day.
3-month period. Per
A
day.
lot.
It's a lot of water.
Wow, a lot.
This community has been designed to use less than that amount so that they don't trigger a water withdrawal permit. The golf course had one. It's not a transferable permit. This community doesn't have it, so they are restricted to use less than 100,000 gallons a day. You asked me a question the other day of how much are we really using, and I told you last year that on average in June, I think it was something like 65,000 gallons a day. In July, it was something like 87,000 gallons a day, and in August, it was something like 75,000. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was somewhere along those lines. So all under that threshold. And formidable as far as I know.
all right,
In terms of that, I think, so I'm also trying to get some clarity here too. So I did see, I don't have the document in front of me, John, but that was when the permit was not rescinded, but became invalid, right? They gave up the permit. There were recommendations from DEP that they suggested Glen Ellen do in terms of data gathering and monitoring. But it's only suggestions from DEP because they have no permit, so they can't require it. So for example, if the board here were to require a permit or when they issue a permit, they can add those if they so choose, those or some of it or part of that to also monitor the use of that well.
The gauges or something?
Whatever, but I don't have the document in front of me.
Yeah.
But there were a number of suggestions that DEP listed in that letter.
Oh, that was the one that, I gave out the
Like, I
3 weeks
can't-
ago, but I gave that out about 3 weeks ago from.
Something like that. If you can pull that up, it might be helpful, but that would be part of, I mean, again, it's. When you amend the regulations, you might be able to amend the permit, right? So. The regulations aren't amended yet, so it's kind of hard. I understand what you're doing, but ultimately. There may be, such you had mentioned, what you test for, what you sample for. That will have to be dealt with at some point.
So Ethan, to speak to your comments.
Mhm.
So the suggestions that were, I think I took them as requirements from the DEP were performed, right? I forget, we had the board of trustees needed to sign off that they acknowledged the requirements. We had to provide the amount of withdrawal DEP for 5 years. I think we're in year 4 of that. I forget what the last one was. We had to report something, I think, record, all of which was done.
I'm looking for the report. It was, if I recall correctly, again, I don't have it in front of me. I don't have that document. But I believe the document was,
Is it the 2021 DEP document?
something, John would have it. It should be in the file.
What you said
Sounds
is,
about right.
what you said is what I just read in here, and the number 3 was adoption of an O&M plan,
Which was done.
which was probably part of number
Yep.
1.
But since that was only a suggestion, you could actually make that a requirement.
Right.
For moving forward, whatever. But those are, I think they just want to make the board aware that that document's there in the file.
Permission to speak, Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just pulled up the document that, John and Ethan are talking about.
Can you share that,
I
please?
I just emailed that to Ethan and John. I don't know if you can put it up.
Okay, well, we'll take it.
Okay, John, you work as the ability.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh, yes,
So,
that's it, good, thank you. Let me
You're welcome.
see.
We'll get that up in a sec.
But yes, in looking at that document, from DEP, they are suggestions, but they're said as the DEP would like this to happen. It didn't mandate that it happen, but I think that those, conditions or those suggestions, on the part of DEP, seem to make sense, in terms of what they're talking about, regarding this transfer.
It's up there now, but I have to, and that, okay, right, get the, aerospace.
It's on the second page,
Second page, we're on the second page.
right there.
Where's that? Just right,
It's that.
let me, see if I can get some, yeah, I'm trying to figure out. How this is. Yeah.
Is the plus right there?
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's-
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
That's good.
That's it.
They're
Alright.
good, okay. What's going on? What's going on?
Okay,
Is that good?
yeah, looks good. Okay, so Mass DEP requests the condominium association legal documents shall include language that educates condominium trustees on Water Management Act regulations and requires the irrigation system be operated and maintained so withdrawals remain below the WMA threshold. That's a 10,000 or 100,000. In order for Mass DEP to verify compliance.
That more clearly seen here.
Oh, I can barely read it. 5 irrigation seasons of monthly withdrawal volumes to the DEP. You're already doing that for how many years?
Yeah, I think we submitted 4
years.
3, but it's
Okay.
3 or 4.
All right, and do we know if the condominium board of trustees adoption of the operations and maintenance plan for irrigation wells is recorded?
Yep, it is.
Okay, this is number 4. Okay,
That's the end.
all right, so it sounds like they've complied to all the DEP's requests there.
Well, if I may, can you go back down that? Can you just make it more clear so it's readable?
What's that?
So just bring it down so you can actually see the words.
This right here?
No, no.
Down?
No, farther up, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. So for example, if, you know, number two, for example, those data should then be submitted to the Board of Health, not to DEP, because DEP is no longer overseeing it. To ensure that the O and M that plan is in place and being complied with, again, submitted to the Board of Health, not DEP, because DEP is not overseeing it. So those are the kinds of changes that would be necessary if the board were to want to adopt or modify those recommendations. Because DEP has nothing to do with this anymore. So it's now your responsibility if you want to take responsibility for it.
There's a portal at DEP that where you like put all this information in and they.
But they're not responsible for it at all. This is only a suggestion. They have no authority. They have no jurisdiction over whatsoever at this point, unless you exceed the withdrawal amount.
Yeah, if they withdraw,
But they also didn't mention the board of Italian Mills.
No, that's up to the board to decide. I'm just saying that the
Well,
DEP is.
you're pointing to the requirements recommended by DEP, which is being complied with. Now you're altering recommendations from DEP.
I want to be more clear. DEP is simply recommending. They have no authority. So if you choose not to do it, that's your business. If the Board of Health requires it to be submitted to the Board of Health, because you're the ones who are asking for it, then that's their responsibility to make sure that it's complied with. I'm not saying you're not going to comply with it. I'm just simply saying that DEP is just providing you a list of suggestions, and the suggestion is a suggestion.
Right, but the conversation went from the suggestions of DEP, which are already being complied with,
Understood.
that the board asked that, told pilot, which they're doing. But now we're going on to now change the requirement or the recommendations from DEP. So, they're complying with what DEP has recommended for 5 years. DEP didn't recommend that the town wanted it, not going forward beyond that, so that's a change to what DEP has recommended.
I agree.
I would, respectfully submit that the recommendations that DEP has outlined here, which Toll has been complying with, would be perfectly fine.
you ask a question. So when Toll just leaves that area, so the HOAs are in charge now of that. They'd have to look at the, they'd have to look to see that it is being in fact.
So we made that transition already. So the last 2 years, the condo trust has submitted that through their management company, Martin. So they have done the submissions over the last 3 years. I've helped them put it together. But they're the ones that submit. So they're aware of this regulation. They are the ones submitting the information.
My only point being is that if, for example, and I'm not suggesting the HOA is only.
This is audible.
What was that?
I don't know, but it's something there. My suggestion is this, simply that if the board wants this to be done, then the board would, I would suggest, would include it as part of the permit, so the board can then determine whether or not it's being complied with, to get the data, to review the data, to see how it works, and to make any changes necessary. If you prefer to leave it in DEP's hands, DEP has no authority whatsoever to require compliance with a suggestion. It's just a suggestion. It's like a red light in Massachusetts. It's a suggestion. There's no requirement. So at least when I was driving here, and but I'm sorry for the joke, but my point being is that for the board to have authority and jurisdiction over it, then you adopt it or you make whatever change you want to, and you include that as part of the conditions of the permit.
I don't think in our current,
What is it, what's on the it's a quick thing, it says Water Management Act permit. Isn't that something that they are in charge of?
Management Act permit is something that is required if you draw over 100,000 gallons.
Right, so there is a penalty for doing
Water
that.
Management Act permit under golf course. We withdrew from that permit because they wouldn't allow it to transfer to the project.
Yeah,
So the withdrawal, this letter is accepting the withdrawal of that permit.
Why would they not allow you to transfer?
I don't. I think they were trying to cut down the amount of permits that existed in the state. I think that is.
Or were they trying to limit the amount of water being withdrawn?
The limit on the permit was 100,000 gallons a day also, it just is on a different average.
All right, so for the board is a motion to approve the retroactive install of the new well pump for well number 1 at RGE.
Well, sorry, I don't know if Jack Carr's been able to weigh in yet.
Oh, sorry, Jacob.
Weigh in terms of, what Ethan is bringing up, regarding integrating some of the, DEP requests into this permit? Is that what you're,
Well, I even meant about the permit application overall, we've gone back and forth on this so many times. I didn't know if there warranted a discussion between us, or if we're just gonna bring it up. So.
If-
That being
what-
said, I gave my opinion in the beginning, so
Yeah.
it would be between. you
oh,
two.
okay. So you're basically, you're asking me about, the actual permit
Right.
form. Is that what you're asking my
Yes.
response to?
I
Okay,
had thoughts on that before a motion is made.
right. Your thought is at this point, within our current 1991 regulations, that this permit move forward. Is that what I heard from you, Matt?
That's my viewpoint, yes,
Yeah.
is that
Right,
we have,
right.
that we are bound to do that.
These are the rules based on when we put in the permit, so therefore we should follow the rules as when they're put in the permit.
Okay, so when we go to the next agenda item and we change those rules, what happens then?
Well, I think part of what we discussed is whether or not any or all changes will be retroactively applied. But I
Is that-
to get there, that I think we have to be careful about what we do and do not want to be retroactively applied, so.
Well, and Ethan, can you explain? I've heard you say more than once, there is no grandfathering when regulations are updated.
On the state level and also in the local level, all public health regulations are not grandfathered unless specifically identified as grandfathered provisions. So in other words, you can grandfather anything you wish to, in the opinion of the board, but you have to clarify that is grandfathered. Otherwise, there's no grandfathering.
We can make all changes apply to new construction and any like transference of property.
Or other approaches too. You have the wide availability of any approach you choose that you think is reasonable. So in other words, let's say another approach could be you allow a permit this year, but next year's permit is not, it has to now meet the new code. If you wanted to grandfather it in that way, you could, for the term of that permit. And you could also do the reverse if you chose that was a real emergency or there was an urgency to it. The Board of Health has broad latitude as to how it writes its regs. But it has to be reasonable and it has to be.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess where I am is we've spent a lot of time and tested, I'm sure, the patience of Toll Brothers in going back and forth about what to do with the irrigation, the quality of the water coming out through the irrigation system into the community. So I guess I'm pausing and saying if we rubber stamp this application tonight, then we update our regulations as the next agenda item for specifically irrigation wells. How are we going to close the gap between the rubber stamped application / permit and what we've updated?
I don't think we're rubber stamping anything. This application's been open for, I don't even know how many months. It's just a simple question of, do we let them used the well pump that they've been using for, I don't even know how long, many years. That they just switched over some pipes or something to update it. It's been in use for many years. It needs to go move through this committee.
Well, and I'm saying rubber stamp because as I understand it, there was not a, there wasn't paper, there wasn't a permit that needed to have a permit. There wasn't a permit, and that's why they're before us tonight to ask for that permit to be completed. Is that correct? Ted and Ted? That there isn't a permit that is actually on record, so that's what you're asking to have completed tonight. Is that correct?
There is a permit on record, so the pump was replaced. At the time it was replaced, Toll was not aware that a permit was required to replace the pump. Once Toll realized that was required, then the permit was filed, roughly 9 months.
Okay, so that's the permit to make this all legit. Okay, got it. I just wanted that on record. Okay, thank you.
And there was another application for the other well, which the board would not accept until this issue was dealt with. So we after we get past this well, we would like to have a conversation about that.
Okay, and that's well number 2? Is that the well that's being paused at this point for permit?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
The open permit for us, the request for permit is on well number 1.
Okay.
So at this point, are we ready to move on with this? Okay. I'd like the motion to approve the retroactive install of the new well pump for well number 1 at RGE. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let me think, am I gonna vote? Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Permit approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, we would like the ability to refile the application for well number 2 and have that treated in a similar fashion, since we were sort of waiting to see how well that went.
It's only fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, late again, 7:30, agenda, final well regulation changes. No, this is a letter. So many papers here. Thank you. All right. All right, so the next discussion is on proposed changes to well regulations. All right, so the first thing I want to bring up is,
Some of these were here, was your questioning.
so these, the
Installation.
what's in red is what I sent in as proposed changes to what Ethan had presented or worked on for us. So I just changed some wording, simple wording. Let's start at the top. Let's go up to 1.1. We'll just go through them each. We'll just push through this. All right.
Go to the very top.
Sorry, it's almost there. There it is. All right.
So some of the early changes are not shown in red here from 1991, I don't believe, or is it? Is every change shown in this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, so yours that you had is automatically in there right now. When you.
Then you don't show those changes.
No, they're black, but they're in there,
Oh, no, I understand.
The only ones that she has.
My changes are red. You'll see red.
Okay, fine.
All right. Okay.
I
So,
understand.
Everything else in there is from 1991, whatever, so.
okay. All right. So most of this from 1991. I'm not changing too terribly much. Okay. Mass General Law. In this addition here to adopts regulation water town Millis, Massachusetts is followed below. The regulations supersede all previous regulations for private, semi-private irrigation was adopted by the board. Okay, 1.1.
So,
How's it work? But not really. Okay, so private well, I don't think we changed anything in that definition, or what a private well, any dug, driven, drilled hole desecrated, largest surface diameter 12 to supply water intended for use in human consumption and or irrigation, commercial use, no environmental analysis not regulated by 310 CMR 222. Semi-public well, I think we changed anything there. Any dug, driven, drilled hole depth greater than its largest surface diameter extracted for attaining or used for intended to serve water irrigation for multiple dwelling or 2 more units. Okay, irrigation well, you say well, any well used for sole purpose of water and irrigation, and irrigation well should include its entire distribution system, included but not limited to holding tanks, pumps, ponds, discharge systems. Well should not be connected at any time to a building unless it's been written approval.
So I just want to point out something, this is, I'm not commenting about the actual wording, but
Yeah.
there's changes in there from the 1991 code. So that's part of it, but it's just not highlighted there, so you don't see those changes that were made. I just want you to be aware of that.
Does anyone have any issues with 1.1 to 1.3? Okay, 1.4, water systems, includes any pipes, valves, fittings, tanks, pumps, motor switches, controls, appurtenances installed or used for purpose of storage, distribution, filtration, treatment, purification of water for any use. I don't know if we need the whether or not inside a building. Anyone have comments or feelings about that?
I would argue for any use covers that.
Okay, all right. Go.
I would argue elsewhere, because
Okay.
I think I'm the one who added outside, not inside of a building, to make sure it's an irrigation well. I
So
will
like
sure.
water systems, any system.
Yeah, but still, I just wanted to avoid any,
Sorry, can you say that again?
I was trying to avoid any ambiguity, so in other words, it could be inside or outside the, and also if it's outside of the building, it could be a faucet, that you could use for watering or something else for that matter. Because we're not just talking about one specific location in town, we're talking about anywhere.
Sure.
So you wanna,
I mean, I'm not wedded to this. I'm just like, but I think I'm the one that added those words.
Can you say for use, for any use inside or outside of a building? Just,
okay. For any use inside or outside a building?
mhm.
Okay, everyone good with 1.4?
Yes.
Okay, 1.5, private water supply. Any water system serving or intending to serve water for human consumption or for domestic uses or purposes on one lot, the system shall be contained on the lot and shall include all the sources, treatment works, and distribution lines to the point where distribution takes place. And I crossed that was in the building on the lot. Because distribution could be the outside faucet that Ethan just talked about.
So you wanna put the same thing up here as down there?
Sure.
We'll put
Yeah,
it in-
okay.
Is domestic uses or purposes linked, or is it domestic uses or purposes?
Domestic uses or domestic purposes?
I just wanted to make sure it's really clear. I don't know,
Well, domestic,
not gonna pretend to be.
What's the
a lawyer.
difference between use and purpose?
If you have uses, but I should have elected a lawyer though.
Yeah, no.
next time. Inside,
Yes, we can ask them.
inside.
I mean, I think it's broad enough to
Inside
include almost
a
everything, which is fine. Yeah.
building. Okay, all right.
It will keep the lawyer confused.
It keeps me confused. and it's
Or
perfect.
employed.
Okay, anyone have any issues with 1.5?
No.
No?
Well, I
Okay.
can't see it. Okay, there we go.
Okay, all right. We good with that language?
1.6, 1.5.
1.5, looking 1.5.
6, okay?
All right, going to 1.6, okay, semi-public water supply and any water system serving or intending to serve water for human consumption and or domestic uses or purposes, including but not limited to multiple dwellings, restaurants, dairies, schools, institutions, campground, recreation camps for children, state, town, forest, parks, beach. All good with that one? Okay, next, okay, permits for private or semi-public water supply wells, irrigation wells. 2.1 permit requirements, no private or semi-public water supply well or irrigation well shall be installed, altered, or repaired until a permit is maintained from Board of Health or its agent. Fee for the permit should be set by the Board of Health from time to time. Permit should be granted, shall expire 24 months from the date of issue unless construction is begun.
If I can, just a quick thing there, I know I made one of the changes there, I don't remember what it was. This is just a question, I believe it's in the 91 code, the Board of Health or its agent, do you want to keep it or its agent, or do you want to just keep it onto the board, you just want to have it just the Board of Health? I don't know, this is your chance to.
Okay, do we want John to be able to give a permit for wells? Core? Yeah.
So I'll say I'm fine with it because I know John, but what if John retires in 6 months?
Wait a minute,
It's only a
I'm getting
suggestion.
close.
I figured you wouldn't want me to say, it, but if John could say.
It's all right, it's fine.
I would say for,
Board of Health, like have them come before and get a permit for Board of Health.
I would say so because also it's agent, I mean, there's a lot of Board of Health agents, right? So,
Oh, yeah, aren't we all?
so I think that is a good suggestion.
Okay, all right, let's strike that.
You wanna go strike this, yeah?
Yeah.
And by the way, the entire code might be rewritten soon anyway, but this is fair.
We're just having fun, so we want to get this done with and off of our agenda.
And the intent was we were actually gonna look at the entire code,
We are.
well, okay.
Well, me, go. Okay, permit applications, 2.2, plot plan should be submitted to the application for a well permit onto the Board of Health indicating proposed location of the well, all buildings, banning lines and septic systems within 200 feet. Sounds fair.
No, I'm not about that part.
You don't
John?
like that?
John, it's not that, I feel like I'm in the Marx Brothers movie. It's like, were there, John, help me out here for a second, were there, from the consultant, from the shared services, was it Glenn? I believe.
Yes,
Were there not changes he was recommending for the entire code? And we're just looking at just for irrigation, or is that not true?
no, he looked on this and then
Okay.
did the small amounts. That you had picked up too,
Right.
and said, okay, good.
I just didn't know what,
Right.
because I haven't attended a couple
Yeah.
of meetings in a while, so.
Yeah. So he's done with this, so he's involved with this, we see that.
Okay.
Okay, where were we? 3.1, gotta get rid of that box.
What's that?
Okay, 3.1 permit release, no foundation or building permit should be issued until the well is installed, completed, and is demonstrated to meet the quality and quantity specified herein. Which I think is below in the regulations, that's why there's a question mark there, I need clarification on that. So we'll take out the question mark. No occupancy of the building, the well is to serve shall be permitted until an acceptable test sample has been obtained from a tap in the building, that's full language. Okay. Any issues with 3.1? All right, moving on. 3.2 sanitary performance. The well contractor shall observe sanitary measures and precautions of the performance of their work in order to prevent pollution or contamination of the well. Use of water from streams, swamps, and abandoned wells for drilling shall be prohibited. All right, 3.3 well drillers must be registered in the Massachusetts Water Research Commission. Copy of registration should be available on site for the agent's review.
That'd be for the Board of Health's review? Or is it supposed to be agent?
I think the agent goes on site to,
Oh, okay.
the person that goes on site to see them do their work.
So John.
That should be, sorry. Can I-
Sure.
That should be Massachusetts, DEP, right here. Massachusetts Water Resource back in 1991 is now Department of,
Yeah, or you could,
Environmental.
or you could put Massachusetts Water Resources Commission of blessed memory.
Yeah, you could
And
do
then-
that. Yeah, you
and then
could,
add
because they,
Mass
yeah,
DEP.
right. I mean,
Plus
people
it-
will know what it is.
We'll put DEP in
I
there.
thought you said.
Okay, so we would do, you know, get rid of this and,
I have fond memories of that commission, if you mention that, sure. Actually not.
Alright. 3.4, well protection. No well should be drilled in standing water or in low spots that may allow ponding or rainfall runoff, groundwater surfacing. The casing shall be set sufficiently in the bedrock, properly sealed to keep out surface water or entry or any other surface or subsurface contamination. Well cap should be 18 inches above surface grade. A 4-foot diameter apron should be constructed around the casing, sloping away at a minimum of 8 horizontal to 1 vertical in all directions to the finished grade. The casing shall be sealed with cement grout to 6 feet below the grade or to bedrock, whichever is less. The wells should be installed downgrade of septic systems shall have casing sealed with cement grout from the apron at surface grade to 20 feet below grade or to bedrock. When bedrock is encountered within 20 feet of surface grade, the seal should be extended at least 5 feet into the impervious bedrock formation. All right. All good with that. All right,
Again, that was all one sentence.
Yeah,
John, this was all reviewed by Glenn, right? Because I was not paying,
Yeah.
I was not paying close attention to.
this is like the culmination of all of you guys' work.
No, I remember that
together.
part, but I was focused on irrigation. That's why,
Okay.
but this does make sense. I'm just trying to, I'm just checking with John because
They just
Yeah.
said sealed, so if there's a septic system up hill, it's not gonna.
it just says 18 inches off the ground and slope away.
No,
Which is, that's what it means.
I get
That's
it.
all it means.
I get it. It makes sense.
High, sloping away.
Sloping, that's what that is.
I
Okay.
get it.
Okay, well location, 3.5, the distance from a well to a sewage disposal system shall be maximized, makes sense, okay, next,
Which one we on, 3.5?
3.5.
We're off 3.5? Or 3.6 now or 3.5?
Yeah, or a 3.6, okay, no well should be less than 100 feet from the leaching area located downhill from such well. Makes sense. No well should be, 3.7, no well should be less than 125 feet from the leaching area located uphill of such a well. Any questions on those two? Good. Okay, 3.8, when the soil percolation rate is less than 3 feet per.
Let's
Sorry.
say 3.7, no well shall be less than
125 feet from the leaching
from the
area
leaching area located uphill.
with a septic system.
I think we have our own septic system and it differs with that being upgrades versus new construction. And it said 100. We go
Downhill
by
is 100, uphill.
Okay,
is
okay.
125.
Yeah, right. So it's not giving away the fact between new construction and upgrade. with
Correct.
that.
It's not,
Okay.
it's not, yes.
Okay.
Is that new to this? Is this?
No, that's old. That goes 1991, but I know there was a septic regulation on the same time. They kind of spoke differently for upgrades versus new construction. But I don't think it's
Does it
that,
make
I don't think it's that, I don't think it doesn't,
Any issues, concerns?
no, not right now, no, I don't think it does.
Alright. Okay, 3.9, wells shall be located no less than 55 feet from the edge of a traveled way or 50 feet from the edge of a right of way, whichever is greater. 3.10, wells should be located no less than 25 feet from the lot line, from any lot line, 75 feet from any adjacent well, 10 feet from any building or projection thereof, 50 feet from any part of the subsurface sewage disposal system. The distance may be increased when, in the opinion of the board, adverse conditions exist. All right, 3.11. Number of wells, there should be a separate well for each house. The well serving that house should be located within the lot boundaries of the house site. No well should be used to supply more than one dwelling. And there's chapter 40, section 54, Mass General Law. 3.12, pump houses, pump rooms, pitless adapters shall be installed in accordance to individual water system, which is the US EPA manual. Or corresponds.
Is there still a US EPA manual?
I Googled it because there was no space there, so I Googled it in US EPA manual.
Is there a date on that manual? Because I know the EPA might do away with it next week.
Well, they're getting rid of everything right
That's
now.
what I'm asking.
Today it's there.
Okay.
So we'll reference it
But
today.
if you references, I would reference a date.
All right, all right.
Because it's a fluid situation for wells. It's a bad pun.
Air system, okay. Um, 1973. This one's from 1973.
Yeah, I don't think there's a current one. That's why I'm asking. I don't think EPA is updated for a long time. I'm not sure if people even use it anymore.
Water supplies,
I have to find out what it is.
but they still have the reference.
Yeah, but it's kind of archaic. Have you
If
ever read it?
kind of from the one piece of it. Yeah.
Yes, it was written.
Yeah.
I think the current law will reference that. I should, I don't think, no.
I don't want to get too, I know we're looking at every sentence here, but I'm almost sure. Versus this,
All right,
it's
so
not
you
been updated in a long time.
want to find a new reference for 3.12 pump houses? New reference, because the old,
Again, I, don't quote me on it, I'm not sure.
because it gives you regulations of how to install,
I understand. And I
which
just
we
don't know
need some sort of guidance.
what you would want the most updated version.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm asking for, is what is the. And I apologize for the office for not getting that updated version, but I'm almost sure it's.
Well, let's work on that for next time. We'll say 3.12, we just need a new reference for pump houses to have an updated reference, because the US EPA manual is from 1973. It may still be good, but I don't know what building code, do they have special building codes now, or? Let's look it up. All right, next. Okay.
I didn't can change it if we had to.
3.14, 3.3, pump house protection. You ready?
You wanna see how this, you wanna see how 3.13 turns out?
Yes, it's very exciting. Okay, pump houses, pump and pipe pits and wells should be designed and constructed so as to prevent flooding, freezing, prevent entrance of sources of pollution or contamination. All right, 3.14, approvals. No person shall install or enter into contract for installing or make additions, modification, or alteration to any private or semi-public well before submitting complete plans, specifications, descriptions to the Board of Health and receive from them written approval. Private semi-approval, private well should be approved by the Board of Health before occupancy is permitted. Move to well specs. Well yields. 4.1 well yield, there should be a minimum yield of 300 gallons per bedroom per day at 20 pounds per square inch at the highest fixture served. System capacity rather than residential water supplies must be adequate to meet projected need. 4.2. Did we lose your car?
Looks like we did actually.
Was she on?
Let's see.
Oh, she's
Oh,
okay.
she just has her camera.
Okay.
Okay, all right, 4.2, storage, all demands for water shall be provided from the storage of a pressure tank for individual home installation shall be diaphragm type and have minimum capacity of 36 gallons. Pressure tanks may be installed in a series to meet storage volume requirements. All good there. All right. Tests log of the well showing depth, type of overburden, depth of casing installed below service grade, diameter of hole of rock, static water level, pumping rate, which can be sustained for at least 4 hours at constant draw depth, down depth. Any that's changed. 4.4, pump test shall be made with faucet open to waste for 4 hour constant pumping period using a pump capable of producing 10 gallons per minute or more. 4.5, in the event the well is exhausted during the initial 4 hour pump test, the faucet shall be regulated after a suitable well recovery of not more than 30 minutes in order to allow pumping at a constant rate for additional 4 hours. Constant draw depth down to determine yield, and that's changed. 4.6, sustained pumping rate of 2 gallons per minute for a 4 hour period shall be a minimum rate. 4.7, the well after pump testing shall recover to within 95% to original static water level within 24 hours period. 4.8, testing and evidence shows satisfactory well yield and recovery shall be demonstrated in the presence of an agent of the Board of Health. don't think any of that's changed. 4.9, the results of the testing shall be submitted on an approved form to the Board of Health for approval, and the well contractor shall be responsible for all data submitted. 4.10, quantity tests shall be performed by competent pump well drilling contractors, and a well shall produce a supply for each dwelling unit served by an on-site well as follows. Up to 100 feet 5, 200 feet, 300 feet 3, and 300 feet and over for, or 2 gallons per minute. Auxiliary power must be available to maintain a water supply for multiple dwellings. 4.2, grade termination pitless adapter shall be provided such that the permanent watertight casing of the well shall terminate minimum of 18 inches above the finished grade in our elevation of 100-year flood.
I have a question, just
Yeah.
because it just hit me, at 4.11. You prohibit multiple dwellings being served by one well, right?
Yeah,
But
that doesn't make any sense.
at least not to me.
Why would auxiliary power be?
Just thought, first time I read it. Excuse me.
Auxiliary power. For single dwelling? Do you need it for mobile dwellings?
We don't have, you don't allow multiple dwellings on one well,
That's true, sorry.
right? So
Do we require it for a single dwelling? If a pump
No, we
fails
don't.
in you don't,
John, we don't, right?
No, I don't think so.
do we need 4.11?
You could get rid of it, but, we
You don't have to get
have
rid of it,
to,
it's just
we have to
there.
change all the, the,
We could
Yeah.
just leave it, like, take it
yeah,
out, leave it blank.
I don't think it's gonna be necessarily concerned.
I think it's totally unimportant, but I'm just
Yeah.
noticing it's
Yeah.
simply, it's just simply
Do we wanna leave
extraneous.
it?
And knowing that the 1991 reg, there's a lot that's not concerning us at this
Right.
point, you know what I mean? In reality, it's, okay,
I'm aware.
yeah.
Alright, do we leave it? We can take out. They leave the title, take out the word,
What's that?
just leave auxiliary power and then just leave it blank, so we just leave the 4.11 for in case we wanna add it later. Unless we're gonna require auxiliary power.
Actually, you could put auxiliary power with nothing after it. People are like, what does that mean? Well, we'll think about
You can
something.
leave it though. It's totally irrelevant.
Okay,
because
alright, then we'll leave it,
I'm just making a,
okay.
because I'm fascinated.
It's fascinating stuff, everyone's gonna sleep all night,
This is right.
okay.
Yeah.
Good. Alright, reserved. Oh, okay. Alright, pipes and equipment, all 5.1, all service pipes and connections shall be a non-toxic material, meet specifications approved by the New England Water Works Association. 5.2, installation pipes shall be such that they are protected from crush, freeze, or attacked by animals or rodents, makes sense. 5.3, dissimilar metals should be discouraged in the water system use of non-conductive plastics inserted between pipes and fittings, or the installation of sacrificial anodes is helpful in minimizing electrical corrosion problems. Any issues with those? Okay. 5.4, electrical service ground shall not be attached to water piping. All electrical service and control of well must be permanent, inspected, approved according to town and state regulations. All right, water quality and quantity specifications. 6.1, sanitary protection. Sanitary protection shall be incorporated in the construction of the well. All newly completed wells should be disinfected in accordance with the instructions from the USEPA Water Supply Manual.
And I don't even know if that exists.
It does exist, it's just old.
Yeah, I think there's an updated.
Just so something is old doesn't mean it's not of value, but
That's-
we will look at let's look at another.
I don't know if there's an updated one or not. That's the question. I really don't know.
All right, well, we'll look for a newer reference. But I like the. I did like the disinfection according to their thing, but, okay, 6.2, sampling quality, a minimum of 2 water samples should be submitted to state-approved laboratory analysis consistent with the Board of Health. With the requirements of the Board of Health, 1 sample should be taken from when the well installation is completed, and 1 shall be taken from a tap in the dwelling before occupancy. All results should be submitted to the board for approval. Acceptance of water quality shall be based on its conformance to the normal characteristics of groundwater in the area as well as established state and federal drinking water standards. All right.
This is where it gets interesting. This is where it gets interesting.
All right, this works. All right, yeah. Okay,
Drinkable wells first.
drinkable wells.
The irrigation was taken out of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took out irrigation wells. Drinkable wells
Are we using
for,
potable wells or drinkable wells, or is drinkable wells defined? It's not, so you're talking about private wells, semi-public, that kind of thing.
Okay, so
drinking water wells, wells providing drinking water.
Well, it just, all it says is a private well, semi-public well here.
so
with that-
drinkable,
Or potable?
Potable,
potable.
Yeah, to say, doesn't need to be potable, non-potable,
yeah.
not the correct. definition.
And I hadn't really looked at that because I was only looking at irrigation. But
You spell that right?
you want to use the same,
POTABLE.
Yeah.
Okay, potable wells.
This is what I put in there, let's see, new and properties.
For new. where did it-
What did you
For
say here?
new construction and upon property transfer? Or sale? Property- Property. Sale.
Sales transfer. maybe.
one way some towns have dealt with it is it's required every time the Title V system has to be inspected. And that usually captures it during
Yeah,
property
but what if they
transfer.
don't have a septic? What if they?
Exactly.
What if they're
I-
on a town manipulable, no, sorry.
Municipal.
Sorry, manual. Yeah. Manual, was it, it would be manual what? It'd be,
What I'm suggesting here is this.
what?
I mean, it's easy to capture it when a Title V system is inspected. That's an easy part. The other part is at property transfer, you could do that if there's no septic system. In other words, you
Wasn't
could,
property transfers trigger the Title V?
well, again, most of them are unless it's sold for cash or purchased for cash. You know, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. How do you capture property transfers? And also, a Title V inspection doesn't have to be conducted. Let's say if it's going from one member of a family to another, there's certain exemptions for Title V inspections. So again, when you do not want to.
Manual wastewater, that's what it was.
What's that?
Manual wastewater. Right, as opposed to the Title V. Right,
Could be, yeah.
right.
But I guess my question for the board is, and this is what I was, when you were presenting that to me, John, and we were thinking about it, is what does the board want? Like, when do you want to have it tested, if you do want to have it tested? And I think you do, so let's say at that point, is it, some communities say every 20 years or every 5 years? And then you would have a report sent to the Board of Health, or it's only a property transfer. Or whatever, you know,
I think the state requires 10 years.
the state doesn't require anything for a
No.
private well.
Right?
That's why you're doing this.
Yeah.
Okay. The state has recommendations, but they don't have any requirements.
That's just their recommendation every 10 years.
Exactly. I believe that's what I think that's what they're, suggesting or recommending is every 10 years. Because some properties don't transfer for decades.
Right.
And let's say a property transfers in 5 years, and let's say you have it every 10-year condition, then it's not necessary to test it for that, as long as that testing is still valid for that 10-year period. So that's why I'm just raising it here for discussion. How would you want to capture that? Because that's the question for the board.
Now, let me ask you something, if I, Chair, if I ask, would this essentially take the grandfather out of it?
Yep.
With the, okay, so that.
Yeah.
that
Well,
speaks-
it could, unless you put it in there.
Honestly,
So
say-
let's say you only do it during property transfer.
Right,
Then you, in essence, you have a grandfathering provision in there until it's transferred.
right,
If you do it every 10-year period, then there's no grandfathering because, well, it's just grandfathering for 10 years. Is really what it is.
Yeah.
Or it's a new sale or new construction, then it comes into effect. So it's a difficult, I would suggest it's an important discussion.
So the new regulation would be potable wells.
It would also be irrigation, well, it would be both, you're right, unless you don't want to
No.
include irrigation wells, but that,
Irrigation wells are not the same standard as drinking water.
they don't have to be, but they
Yeah.
can be. I'm just saying that's again, that's why you're on the board.
Yeah.
Okay. Um. And those are the questions we were struggling with before presenting this.
I'm not comfortable with irrigation wells being tested for PFAS, same levels as drinkable water, because if the health effects are in drinkable water. So
Well,
if you're
actually, we
putting
had-
the same regulations on something that's just not being,
Actually, I think I heard something different when Wendy Harder Renee spoke
well, I
about,
heard that it goes into the water system, but that's where you need the water protection of the drinking water.
I don't know, again, that's a different, I would go back to the discussion, but, PFAS, you're not talking about PFAS yet, right?
We're just talking about testing for PFAS
Oh,
in
we are?
wells, drinkable wells.
Okay.
Or portable wells. So for all new construction. And upon property sale or transfer, private wells. Shall be tested for PFAS contamination.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, I guess the real question was, first of all, when do you want to have the wells tested? That was that section there, not what you're testing for, but when do you want them tested? That was that section.
For all new wells after this date and time. And then upon the property transfer of a house or a private well.
Or the state recommends every 10 years. It's another way of looking at it.
Take that out.
How much is the
Why?
testing cost?
As we do this.
Sure.
PFAS testing.
So what's going on here? So excuse me, what's going on with the 20 parts per trillion and the drinking?
Well, we haven't gotten that.
Okay,
that
so
sentence.
the PFAS is still on, okay, right?
Yeah.
That's still on.
We're just talking about when we will test for PFAS.
Well, okay, you can do that too. You can just say test for PFAS and that's all you're requiring.
Yeah.
Or you can do the whole suite of testing every 10 years, or you could do partial.
Well, it should also meet these other laboratory tests. That's
That's
the
why,
next
that
section.
was one question,
This is
I guess,
just-
why is that separate from laboratory tests?
So it should be down here.
That was another.
So instead of 6.3, this should be 7 point.
It could be a part of 7.4.
Yeah.
Or it could be part of 7.3 and 7.4. Or its own thing.
7.1.
If you wanted to be very clear, I would make it its own thing.
All right. These guys.
So does that first sentence cover if I drilled a new well on my property? My property, I'm not changing it, but I decide I need a different well. Is it covered in that? Cause the way I read that is. But
mean,
I
new
guess does
well
that count as new
construction.
construction or is new construction if you build a dwelling?
New well construction.
Yeah, right, right, I see that now.
And upon property sale or transfer should be tested for PFAS contamination upon initial establishment. Potable well should meet Mass DEP standards for PFAS in public drinking water, 20 part. Thousand for the sum of,
Should probably, this is gonna sound silly, but at some point, make sure that the definition of PPT is parts per trillion, because that can also be parts per thousand.
oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Not used often, but when I was just looking this up for John, I saw it. Well, it's kind of covered there by having the milligrams per liter, but it's still probably good to call it out specifically somewhere.
Shall we move on to the next thing and come back to this?
But do we need to discuss which wells are included here? Is it only for potable water or is it for any well?
Well, farther down is a separate section just for irrigation wells and testing, so.
So then we want this to be specific for essentially drinking
This
water.
is drinking,
Okay,
or drinking,
Here.
this is drinking wells. The potable drinking wells.
we don't have to do it here, but I do think there's a question of, do you want this to be 7.2 and then everything sequentially gets renumbered, or do you want it to be part of 7.1?
Well, there's still a chemical test, but. Pick a number if you want.
No, I'm just asking because I think if you go on, there's a separate section for bacteria.
Yeah,
And
7.2 is
then
back here.
chemical and physical analysis. So, it could also be a part of 7.3, even if it is, like its own paragraph, but it could still be part of that subsection.
7.3,
That makes sense.
yeah,
That way the chemicals are put together.
yeah. Okay. 7.1, chemical, physical, bacteriological analysis, water protection mass certified laboratory shall be required. Water which does not meet the acceptable standards of agencies of state, federal government for potable water supply should be grounds for the rejection of the well. 7.2, bacteriological tests to indicate 0 to per 100 ml coliform density shall be required. A total bacterial count shall also be determined at 35 degrees Celsius. And 7.3, chemical and physical analysis, including tests for volatile organic compounds, shall be required. Acceptable alternative to 524 is EPA methodology 502.1 and 503.1. If the 502.1, 503.1 methodologies are used, the volatile is detected, double confirmation test is required. Analysis should be performed at least for pH, color, odor, iron, turbidity, manganese, ammonium, nitrate, nitrogen, nitrate, nitrogen, nitrite, nitrogen, alkalinity, hardness, total hardness, sodium chlorides, lead, and arsenic, and potable wells for mucus.
Sorry, two questions. One is,
Sorry.
why is sodium chloride plural?
I don't know.
I asked because I want to make sure
Yeah,
that whoever wrote that, the intent wasn't some sort of, obviously, right, just like there's different nitrites and nitrogens, there's different types of chlorides. But I'm assuming it's just for salt. Another question on, because I just don't remember what the table is further down on 7.2. Total bacterial count, is it determined or specified later what that count should be?
I think it's down in the chart.
And I ask because for the coliform, it's very clear of 0. It's clear coliforms need to be 0.
Yeah,
The total bacterial count, although there is more flexibility there, and I would be shocked if the answer is 0. Let's pretend it came back 1,000 CFUs per mil, no one's gonna want to drink it. On the other hand, maybe that would come back turbid and it wouldn't matter, but I guess my question is, does there need to be specificity around the total bacterial count? I'm remembering from back in the day, we used to do water testing like this. And I think that there were standards like less than 10 PFU per mil or 100, like there was some number that was utilized, but I don't know where that number came from.
Yeah, I thought they had. This is exactly what we used today.
Bacterial
It shows here.
count standards.
Coli,
With this,
which is right here. 100,000.
yeah,
It is 100 milliliter right here. See that?
yeah, so that's for
that's
the,
what-
so that's for the coliform part, and that actually is a better way to put it, is what they have is less than 1 MPN per 100 mils.
So,
Because
Less than.
0 is impossible to prove, but the limit of detection for that assay is usually gonna be 1 colony forming unit.
okay,
And MPNs are based on, it's all statistics and stuff, so that's why you honestly can't say 0. So like if you wanted to be very, very strict with this, the result is less than 1, that's not 0.
okay.
So yeah, thanks, John, for pointing that out. What I'm not seeing on here,
Full bacteria count, is it?
here it is. So for the heterotrophic plate count, which is another, you could argue that total bacterial count actually should be heterotrophic plate count, although I don't know enough to like say we should change it to that. What they have here is less than 2 MPN per 1 mil. That's,
For 1 mil?
yeah, and of course I can't remember how MPN stands for. 1 second. No, wait, it should be on here, right?
Should be on this.
It's got VOCs and everything else.
Yeah, it's a bacterial thing. It's like MOI for bacteria. Let's see. Those probable number. And then the other thing is, so this has, it's probably acceptable how it is, but like this testing actually tests for coliforms and E. coli's. So all E. coli, coliforms, not all coliforms are E. coli. So this does cover it, but if you wanted to distinguish between the two, you could. I think it's sufficient how it is, but
Is
it
there
is
value?
common to be tested both for them. And the testing methods are very slightly different. They use different broths to test them. Again, I think this is fine. I just wanted to bring it up to be comprehensive.
Okay, so
So I guess the choice here is, do we want to keep it total bacterial count? Do you want to change it to heterotrophic bacteria, which is the normal phrasing that's used for testing for, let's say,
so the
common bacteria in an aerobic water at 35 degrees?
heterotrophic bacteria
Yeah.
count shall be determined at 35 degrees. Which is a testing method.
Yeah, hetero.
It's still
Trophic, so there's a pH, I see. I would argue that we actually take out the 35C and you let the lab determine what it should be. It's, if I'm remembering right, it is 35, but I hate to have the lab come back and say, what are you guys talking about?
That's true, I mean, they're the experts.
So heterotrophic shall also be determined less than 2 MPN per 1 mil.
At less than 2 MPN
Yeah.
per 1 mil.
Oh, wait, I'm wrong on that. I'm sorry. It's 500.
For 500
It's 500.
ml.
500 MPN per mil. That's one of those things where like, there's bacteria and everything that you eat and drink. It's just how much makes you sick. And for total, it's not 0. Whereas for coliform, you're gonna know if you have 2. Like, sure.
Doesn't kill you, makes you stronger.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah, is everyone okay with that? I know it's kind of a change from how we had it.
and that makes sense. That's the way the testing is done.
Yeah.
Okay, so bacterial testing, okay, less than 1 MPN, which is the most probable number, per 100 ml coliform density shall be required. The heterotrophic bacteria count should also be determined at less than 500 MPN per ml. Good at that, Kerr? Right, so chemical,
Yes.
okay. Chemical and physical analysis, including testing for volatile organic. Well, we already read that one. Any issues with the chemical physical analysis? Removing potable wells for new construction upon property sale and transfer shall be tested for PFAS contamination upon initial establishment. Potable wells shall meet the Mass DEP standards for PFAS in public drinking well water of 20 PPT, which parts per trillion, for the sum of the concentration of 6 specific PFAS, PFOA, PAFHXS, PFNA, PFHPA, and PFDA. Any issues with that?
Seems reasonable.
All right, and we get our concentrations, which I think were the standard concentrations.
I have a question before we get to that. And that is, I'm just curious, why does why do these local regulations do not include testing for radon or any radioactive materials? I'm just curious. Is there ever a decision why?
Question.
That right into
When I look at a map of Massachusetts, you're what they call moderate zone for radon. You're not severe, but you're not level. And again, some communities require it, some don't. The state recommends doing that.
radon testing.
Yeah.
Wells.
Yeah. Now, again, when I was looking at this, I wasn't thinking about it. I was just thinking irrigation. I did always doing. So that's, but I'm raising it right now as I'm thinking about it.
Well, I guess I don't know that. I was gonna say, I don't think many labs are certified to test for radioactivity, but radon is radioactivity. So I think it depends on what kind of radioactivity you're referring to.
Well, for example, like if, it dissolves in the water and it comes up, let's say from usually it's from bedrock. I mean, if it's a very deep well,
Yeah.
you might find it there. And again, I don't know how at risk this part of the state is, other than just looking at the general map, which when I
Yeah.
looked at it a while ago, you're moderate, which is, it may or may not. And I'm just curious as to, I just don't know why it was left out in 1991 or.
It's a good question. I don't know.
Is radon testing available for?
Done very well.
So let's discuss that in 7.3 radon testing. Let's look that up,
Yeah, we should.
get some references.
Jaiker here, the Mass Department of Public Health recommends testing all homes with the EPA action level for radon 4 parts CI over L. But there is no state mandate. It's a recommendation at this point.
I think that's in the home testing, not in the well.
Yeah, it's
really
not in
for-
the, yeah.
No, I'm talking about drinking water. There's if you go to the DEP model reg. I'm almost sure, again, I wasn't focused on it, but I'm almost sure there's a section in there. I can guarantee it. There's a section in there about it.
Actually, going back to the sodium chlorides again, like looking at this, they're not testing specifically for that. They test for sodium, they test for chloride. And
That's what it's doing.
I'm wondering if that's what it is supposed to be.
Sodium, chloride.
Yeah,
So DEP, Mass DEP strongly recommends all private well owners test their water for radon. So I just went to the DEP site.
Okay,
Um,
thanks. Does it mention other forms of radioactivity?
Does
The
it mention?
model- Other forms of radioactivity?
No.
Actually, John Carr, I
And-
believe I'm sorry, if you go into the model reg, it's a relatively thick volume.
Mhm.
And I believe there's a chapter in there regarding that, or a section regarding that.
Right, so I've got, I'm looking at it right now. Radon level, radon testing home, testing water. I'm just looking, oh, you want the map of the radon?
I thought there was some recommendations are in the
Yeah,
model.
we have the highest, but we're in the highest potential.
Oh, we are.
Highest potential.
It
Yep.
just increased 2 minutes.
Can I interrupt just perhaps, I mean, can you let me in on the Zoom? I think I've said all I need to say,
All right.
but I'd like to
Yeah.
listen on whale.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, sure. Do we have anyone from RTC?
Yeah, so remember I told you,
Oh, yeah, okay, okay. So we're not doing an RTC discussion today?
TRC.
Sorry, tears.
RTC, sure, they're gonna.
All right, I'm just listening.
Ethan or Jacquard, do you know if the radon, recommendation predates what we're upgrading here or not? I'm just curious why it's not here, if there was a reason or if it just.
That was my very question, because no, the radon was a concern even back then.
Right.
So I don't,
So they're saying, so I'm just looking,
Recommending drinking water standards for radon range from 300 to 10,000 PCI per liter.
I just stop, so Steve, I just stop sharing so I can pick up Ted.
Sure.
Same thing.
guideline of 10,000, for radon in drinking water, Mass DEP.
Right there.
Yeah, so, no, that's.
Yeah,
Listen, Ken.
And
also-
also, some local boards of health or mortgage lenders in Massachusetts require well testing, water testing, including for radon. So mortgage, interesting.
I think when you sell your house, you gotta get it tested for radon,
yeah, but
Yeah.
not for water,
but not for water.
unless the mortgage holder requires it for your well water. But most people, let's say you're not in well water, they still require your testing for some mortgage providers require the testing, but it's a different test.
Yes,
It's
because you're testing for gas, you're not testing for.
correct.
Yeah.
The concern is in the water, it becomes gas when it enters into
When
the
it goes
home.
into your house.
That's the reason you would test for it. Whereas when it's in water, it's you're not breathing it.
Right.
Right. And then there's also, I think they also have something for like a gross screening, like a gross alpha screening. Maybe is in there too. But again, I don't know why, I'm just throwing it out there. It's just a question I have.
Do we know if these EPA methodologies are correct? I believe they are, because I don't think they get changed about once every 50 years.
I think it is
But
updated.
I'm just curious if we know, do we reference that?
It's usually a good idea to reference it.
It's what?
It's usually a good idea to reference it. And there should be methodology for PFAS as well. That should be
That's a good
referenced.
point.
5.21 is.
That's a good point.
And I don't remember, I have it written down, to see if I remember, it's not.
Um,
5.3 is volatile, aromatic, and unsaturated organic compounds in water using Persian trap gas chromatography.
that sounds right. This says EPA methods 533 and 537.1
Yeah, I forget which one is the.
for PFAS.
Yeah, hold on,
Let's see.
That should be. using
Isotope pollution.
EPA testing method. Was it 5.5?
533
We,
and 537.
seven.
There are two different methods.
Yes, there are.
I think giving flexibility is probably okay. That being said, I mean, we could dig into it if we wanted to be.
But if I may, I forget which one is, I just don't have it memorized, but there is a preferred methodology for drinking
Is there?
water. And I have it, but I don't have it readily available in front of me.
Yeah, yeah, and even 537.1 is for alkyl substances in drinking water, whereas 537 is for alkyl acids in drinking water. So we might want to just slightly dig into this to be absolutely sure, or we
Okay.
could list them all. Because then it gives flexibility to the testing lab.
That's true.
Well, if
Maybe you don't want that.
no, if I may,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think that, if you don't mind, I need to dig for it. I just have it, I don't have it directly in front of me. I can get that very quickly.
Well, we can make that as our notes, like for 7.3, if we want to add radon testing.
Methodology, no, we're talking
No,
about PFAS
okay.
methodology right now. That's where,
Preferred testing method for PFAS,
or the required methodology.
or the required method. Required
And I'm,
testing.
So this, I agree that we should double check this. The table that I'm looking at from EPA suggests that method 533 and 537.1 both detect these. But the way that you prepare a sample could differ by methodology and could change the interpretation of the
Exactly.
data.
exactly.
So I think we should be really sure.
What did I just put down? EPA methodology, what's it say?
Hey, hold on for a second. Is there,
Yeah.
are there students listening? Because there might be some, are there more people listening in on the call? All right, Danielle is working on PFAS testing right now, and if she has,
I don't
What
see her.
methodology?
Danielle.
okay,
I don't see her, but it,
This shows
You wanna
EP
ask her?
method
I'll text her.
537.1. This for 18 specific PFAS in drinking waters. And EP method 1633 is used for testing 40 PFAS in a wider range of environmental samples, including wastewater, surface water, and soil. Sounds like 537.1 is the one for compliance testing. Almost there.
Sometimes these numbers change over the years, though. That's the
I'm
thing.
still bringing them
that
up,
is
though.
slowly,
No,
not dramatically,
yeah,
I'm bringing them up.
because people get used to the numbers and they.
right.
Ooh, Grace with that, okay. If Grace is. Hold on. Grace might know.
What is she,
Let's see, what's the preferred methodology for PFAS testing?
This is 537.1, but.
Is that what Grace is saying?
No, she's not on.
That's-
Oh, no, it is Grace.
What do,
Grace Fairchild?
yeah. Grace Fairchild, is that the person?
Is that who you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's on.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know
Yeah.
about the preferred methodology though.
Oh, you're not sure? Okay, just checking
Yeah.
with you. Thank you. I'm just trying to remember. Okay.
All right. Okay, so we can come back to that one next time. We need to discuss whether or not we're adding radon testing requirements for well water. And confirm the PFAS testing method preferred for PFAS. All right. So the concentrations of these chemicals. Those are historic levels. Any issues with the concentrations for the various chemicals in water?
I think we should double check this as well,
Okay.
since we're already looking at EPA methods. Because one of the things that wasn't clear to me, looking at this testing report that John has, is why we've chosen some things and not others.
Yeah, it doesn't mention. all
Yeah,
this.
arsenic is one that stuck out to me, so I think we should just be really
We need to
certain of what we should and shouldn't include here.
double check
It
chart.
has potassium, iron, and then like calcium is on this one.
Doesn't have potassium.
Um,
Doesn't have nitrogen.
Lead's not on there either, right?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, lead was another one I was curious about, again, just to see recommendations of.
We need to add more to this chart here.
yeah, I know, I think we had, I'm looking at, a couple, I'm looking at Stowe and Groton in terms of what they are pulling out. They have calcium, copper, iron, magnesium, manganese, chloride, chlorine, color, conductivity, fluoride, hardness, odor, pH, radon, sulfate, turbidity, and sediment.
And which
So-
town is this?
This is Stowe and Groton, Mass.
They do radon, by the way.
Yeah, those all sound very reasonable to me. I was also curious about fluoride, just given that it's not always in water, but sometimes people want it. I think it'd be nice to know. There could be a difference also when we get into the details of things that we think should be tested for awareness versus not exceed. So if we think that there are things that we want like that, we should also be specific. Typically, I believe that if you send water for this testing, they just do it all. Because they usually have a method. It's usually like, I think you had mentioned gas chromatography or liquid chromatography, and the way it's set up is it just tells you everything. So it doesn't really cost them more to tell you, so they usually just follow everything that's in whatever EPA methodology they use. That's my experience, at least. I don't know if you've seen the same. Because I think that's reflected in this report where there's so much stuff in there. It's because it's just part of the method.
Yeah, this is typical certificate of analysis from drinking water that all these labs do.
Yeah.
You know, to satisfy DEP, maybe even EPA and what they're testing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I got 7.4 is we're gonna go back and we need to add more items to this chart. Okay, so. See. Why is it only call out sodium content exceeding this level must be made known to occupants and our owners, and writing a copy of such notification signed by occupants and owners submitted to the Board of Health?
It's a good question.
Why just that? What about the lead and the radon?
Yeah, we should probably dig into that. Not only the sodium, but as you mentioned, the others.
Well, you know, with sodium, if I'm not mistaken, in Sherburne, if you have an excess of sodium, it has to be also on your deed, reported on your deed.
Really?
Yeah.
I think that is actually DEP, someone said.
It might be
was-
recommendation, but I know that Sherburne requires it.
Yeah,
Okay,
Again, just the concern of sodium intake of your diet.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, we'll look into that one.
But no, I think sodium's good now.
I know, right.
Right?
It was in 91.
No, but now it is.
I don't know.
We're making sodium great again.
Okay,
This is online?
unfortunately,
Is anyone on YouTube to see how many people are watching this?
I haven't checked.
6 million right now.
Oh, okay.
We've got a lot of people watching us.
All right, the Board of Health may
They're very
require,
boring.
this is how you fall asleep. Board of Health may require that any private or semi-public well, including wells used for intended for drinking water and or irrigation drilled on or within 1,000 feet of a landfill, waste site, agricultural land use, recreational use, including but limited to golf courses, playgrounds, parks, 21 east sites or similar uses, may be required to conduct water quality analysis of including but not limited to PFAS, petroleum hydrocarbons, arsenic, pesticides, insecticides, including but not limited to organochlor. Shouldn't be it. Organochlorines, organophosphates, carbamates, and pyrethroids. The
This is-
test
This is.
That's what I wrote.
This is Ethan's.
Yeah.
protocol will be determined by the board upon review of each application made based upon the specific historical, current or proposed land use of the location in use of the wells.
So the reason I wrote that, besides the fact that I wanted to write something, seriously, looking at again, Glen Ellen as an example, because there you have an unusual circumstance. Prior land use, which would not necessarily impact or not be similar to, would not, this is unusual, this is unique, and so it requires a unique review, in my opinion. That's what I'm suggesting to the board. Because not everyone, has bought land that was a golf course. Not everyone is, living on land that formerly was a farm. But if you're in certain locations, then this is a way to capture the unique circumstances. And it would have to be reviewed by the Board of Health to determine what the requirements would be for testing.
So this, something
I'm sorry?
make a statement, is, that would include potentially where the golf course was, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the goal. So in other words, let's say there's an old landfill that's been covered, whatever, or there's a 21E site that still hasn't been closed, or even has been closed. There could be reasons why you'd want to test for certain sampling, certain sampling that you wouldn't do, the run of the mill, well. Because there's no call for it, there's no need for it. The likelihood of finding something is relatively small. But we know we certainly know that past uses for golf courses, let's just use golf courses as an example. In the 1960s and 1970s, heavily used organochlorines, organophosphates. Some of these chemicals do bind with the soil more easily than others. Some of them may be more likely to show up in water, but on the other hand, when I was looking at golf courses, there's an interesting technical study from Cape Cod a couple of years ago, where you wouldn't be looking for organochlorines necessarily in groundwater, but in sandy soils, they're finding levels of relatively significant levels of organochlorines when the science says you probably shouldn't find it. But the fact is that was a golf course. Now, did that golf course use an extraordinary amount of this stuff, or is it because the soil is so sandy? And are there other unique situations given the environment, the soil conditions? Don't know. But given the fact that it was a golf course, and they did a series of golf courses, and golf courses are problematic.
Yeah.
We just know they are.
Okay, yeah. Well,
So that's the reason why, that's the rationale behind that paragraph. And it's not saying all wells have to be tested for all these things. That's not the intent. The intent is based upon prior land use.
Right.
Or nearby prior land uses. That should raise a red flag of it needs extra review.
Yeah, risk mitigation. So one question I meant to ask earlier and forgot, sort of alluding to the evolving landscape of federal regulations. Does Mass DEP have regulations similar to, the different organophosphates, et cetera, or does that lie with the EPA?
Massachusetts has a relatively, so under the Mass Contingency Plan, which is 410 CMR 30, I think. It's only about 1,800 pages long. But I was actually using it this morning for another purpose. That I believe, yes, would encompass.
I'm curious if we think we should if we should include EPA or DEP, like whichever is whatever, or are we comfortable with EPA? I would just hate to become the Wild West, even though that's probably not the perspective of the Massachusetts DEP.
I, do you want me to answer that?
Whoever wants to answer that, I just thought I'd throw it up for discussion.
And also, if anybody's listening, I'm, right now, I'm more inclined to, if you're going to reference, I would probably reference Mass DEP. I think we're a little bit more stable in terms of what we're doing. And I think there's more consistency. And they do a really good job in terms of, like, for example, you met Wendy?
Yeah.
She's part of that team.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty comfortable with her.
So I don't know what the other board members think, but I think we should consider that versus the EPA. Even, however, I don't know this, but my gut feeling is most testing labs probably reference EPA test methodology. So if so, we might want to make clear that equivalents or whatever are acceptable.
Something like that.
So I don't want to make it too complicated, but I hesitate to not acknowledge the current shifting tides, maybe is the way to put it.
Well, maybe, and maybe DEP, I'm guessing here, maybe DEP is gonna deal with those shifts as well, because, I mean, for example, we're getting rid of vaccines. So,
I know. I didn't even bother poor Sarah with any questions.
right, so if we're getting rid of, let's say, testing requirements for water, don't know.
Right. Right, and currently we don't have fluoride in there, although we've talked about having it, and that will be I think, a point of national contention at some, right?
I think it already is.
It is, but it hasn't gotten to the point of testing like you're saying, but that's just probably a matter of time. And it'll be a question of what does Massachusetts do about that? Anyway, not to get too philosophical. Something to consider.
I think it's important.
Okay, so you're using testing protocols based on DEP 410 CMR 430.
That's not the only, there's other regulations as well. I'm just saying that's one of the regulations there.
Well, and I wasn't clear. I was thinking about this concept of including Mass DEP recommendations for testing and limits and everything throughout the document. Because in the earlier section, we referenced some EPA methods. We said we were going to look up some EPA PFAS methods. And I guess what I'm suggesting is maybe that is not sufficient.
Right. So I wouldn't, yeah, exactly. I would agree.
All right. So instead of using EPA standards, you want to change to Mass DEP under 7.3?
It could be both.
Maybe, I honestly think that we need to look into it a little bit before doing so, because I don't know the 1,800 page document. I don't know the differences between that and the EPA. Yeah, maybe that's the better way to say it is, I have personal concerns about the fluidity of certain testing requirements and would like to reference federal versus state and understand the difference.
Okay. All right, so let's work on that one next time. We'll put 7.3 aside. We'll look at the Mass DEP regs versus EPA regs for testing and figure out which is the better choice. All right. And then for this statement where it's requiring testing for these special locations, should we make a statement, something about like for new development or change in property? We gotta be careful here.
Or it could be just also change in knowledge. So for example, let's say a 21E site is identified. You didn't know about it before.
I think at 21E, the state would.
They don't require you to test your private well necessarily. Depends.
Electricity or.
Yeah, there's a tag down there.
So for example, let's just say, I'm just using it.
Well, they're starting a drinking water well testing program.
Right.
And if you get over 20 PPT, then you're now a 21E site.
That's a different question. Yeah, I understand that. But if you, the point of this again is, let's say you have a known site of concern. Right, this is a golf course. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a 21E site. But let's say you find out that prior land use, it's funny, I use this as an example. and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, but where I live, we moved there, we wanted to, start a vegetable garden. And so we had a soil test, and it turned out that we had extraordinarily high levels of arsenic. And there was no reason for it until we learned that the trees in our neighborhood were lined with Dutch elm trees. And the Dutch elm disease was killing the trees. They were prevalent in the early 1960s, and the preferred method of treatment was spraying with arsenic. They would have arsenic poisons. Yes, so it didn't save the trees, but
Yeah.
and that's why we have such high levels of arsenic in our soil.
Yeah.
It's just you don't know. So sometimes that's a reason for testing.
Well, that statement's pretty vague, may require, it's not required,
It's meant to be vague.
all right. We can go back over that next time. Everyone think on that. We should also specify what testing protocols we're talking about.
We'll get it would be site specific.
Oh, okay.
Here.
All right, so 7.5, where applicable water quality, semi-public water supply shall comply with effective regulations of the US EPA and Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 7.6, if any concentration of volatile organics is detected and the sodium concentration greater than 20 milligrams per liter,
Oh, there it
documents
is,
are
right there.
recorded in the Fort County Register of Deeds, which identifies the chemicals, their concentration, health effects, and the whole house treatment system for removal of volatile organics shall be installed if they are detected. But don't
How
say
often does that happen, John?
What's that?
How often does that happen?
What's that?
the volatile organics detected.
Or
Or sodium.
registry of deed, sir, filing for sodium.
I haven't had it since I've been here.
Really?
Sodium, it was over 20.
You know, when I did some part-time gig work at Sherburne, Sherburne, when Mark was on leave. And we had like in a year about a dozen or so.
Really?
Yeah,
That's surprising to
it was two to me, but they were like, yeah. I was surprised.
Yeah.
It's almost like the labs were reading it. I mean, it was-
Yeah, I would have guessed you would have to like build over a gas station or something.
I'm not talking
Like
about
that.
VOCs, I know it's sodium.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant VOCs.
Yeah,
So,
I'm talking about sodium.
This one right here
The
is
Romans were there
8.4.
apparently and
Yep.
didn't want anything to grow, I don't know.
I was just as surprised.
Yeah, that is strange.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned with your other example, there's probably something if you could dig into the history, but. Okay,
But reasonably.
Any issues with 7.5 or 7.6?
no,
All right, water conditioning, 7.7, permanent disinfection of a polluted water supply shall be prohibited. The natural water quality does not meet physical chemical criteria as listed in section 7, water conditioning shall be required. Water softener or other treatment backwash shall not be discharged into the septic system. Treatment units shall be installed with the capability of bypassing such units if necessary or desired.
so what does that first sentence mean? I know that sounds silly, but
Permanent
what that means
disinfection of
is you
polluted
can't
water.
dump bleach into a pond, but you can put it through a treatment system and that's acceptable? Is that kind of what we're getting at?
You
I think
gotta
that-
treat the water,
I
right?
think that's from the 1991 code.
Permanent disinfection. Polluted water supply shall be prohibited. That's weird.
There was a lot in the 1991 codes that was a little bit odd.
It was a great year.
Yeah.
Why would you prohibit permanent disinfection of polluted water supply?
I know, that's kind of what my question was, like, who would do that? Why would you do that? Why would you not do that?
Yeah,
I just don't know.
are they saying you're not supposed to say your well came up with high coliform bacteria? You're not just gonna dump the bleach in there like, oh, it's good and go on.
I mean, I could imagine that's part of, it could be part
Like,
of.
is that what they're trying to say?
Maybe.
The languages in this is kind of rough.
I guess you could imagine a scenario where you're trying to make it better and you make it worse and then you're testing for other things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm not clear if it should remain or not.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure. An unintended outcome.
The whole not be discharged into septic probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, The treatment unit probably makes sense. I guess it's just that first sentence I saw. I'm unsure of. This is when we need Kathy here, because she'll know why it was in there. Actually, that's a good point. I wonder if we should have made a list of things we want to refer to Kathy.
I'm writing down all the
You know
ones
what I
that we
mean?
have.
Like, you have that, because maybe she does know.
Let's see, 7.7, the first sentence.
I think she's on board back then.
I think so, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
Sure.
We think she was.
We
on
know
the
someone
board.
was on the board.
Have you met Kathy? You've met Kathy Lennon, right? Yeah.
Okay. All right,
I
so
thought they built this building around her.
maybe
Oh, she's not listening on YouTube.
peer result review consultant, okay.
This came from me.
All right.
I'll take ownership.
All right, the board at sole discretion may determine the project size, scale, complexity, potential impacts, long-term monitoring, and compliance with the board's well regulations warrant the use of a peer-reviewed consultants, including but not limited to engineer, planner, lawyer, hydrologist, risk assessor, and others. Such consultants shall assist the board in their review and comment prior to action by the board in project review, inspection, and or other technical or legal assistance necessary to ensure compliance with all relevant laws and regulations. Such assistance may include but shall not be limited to analyzing wells, providing legal counsel, and monitoring or inspecting a project or well during construction or post-construction for compliance with the board's well regulations. Such consultants shall be selected and retained by the board with the actual and reasonable cost of services paid by the applicant. Mass General Law, C-44, Section 53G, employment of outside consultants.
Yep.
Just
One very minor point, and it says including but not limited to, do we want to have hydrologist and hydrogeologist, because they are slightly different?
Toxicologist too.
I gotta be honest, I get nervous about the not limited to, because I feel like we've had plenty of people come here and say, but it doesn't say this.
Okay.
On the other hand, I can imagine that you say, well, we can't put everything that exists there. If it's toxicologist, bacteriologist,
Yeah.
like, whatever.
John, did you say proctologist?
No, toxicologist.
I just say.
No. No. My vocal could get me bad. No.
here, almost there. All right.
We really are.
We are. No one's
This,
like other.
this is the killer right now, prohibitions.
All right, prohibitions. Surface water supplies for private or semi-public water supplies may be prohibited. What?
That was
Said it.
1991.
Yeah, I don't
What I
get-
was saying was potentially allowing the pond.
And that actually goes back to the irrigation well too.
Yeah, probably so.
But it doesn't, what water supplies, like,
The pond.
you don't want
supplies
drinking
water.
water from a.
If you
It's
have a
irrigation.
little reservoir on your land, if you
Right.
have if
This
you-
is why I was saying that when the original MTC said this made no sense into irrigation, I said this
I know.
applies it to them.
I know,
And they didn't
But it's not
believe me then
clear.
too, I don't know, but I think that's the only reason why that's up there.
I believe you, John.
Yeah.
Not clear.
But the thing is, that's, let's say,
But it said shall be prohibited, I changed it to may,
May.
because shall means nothing.
well, the problem with the
So it's
surface.
a little strange.
It's really hard to monitor and to ensure that a surface water supply system is safe. That's why even with this irrigation system, again, that's not the topic for today, but that raises all sorts of issues. The surface retention ponds and things like that are not so easy.
For drinking water, definitely not safe.
Well, for
That's sure.
anything, it's not so
We could
easy.
change the surface water supplies for irrigation, or something like that. Water supplies may be prohibited, but it could be passed by the board.
It must be
Place
approved.
like where the golf course was.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think, isn't there a variance section here in the code? Isn't there a section for variances?
I think so.
So, yeah, so
we're
it was
almost there.
variant. But in general, I'll say this again, surface water supplies are. They're
I
nightmarish.
don't know if we
I hit a button, I actually muted us, so
Can you hear us?
you can still hear us,
Jerry,
right?
can you hear us?
All right.
Okay, all right.
But we can't hear her.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you.
Mouse is like, no,
Yeah.
Actually, there's no words.
okay, so may be prohibited, surface water supplies. Some public, some water, here. Private or semi-public irrigation,
Public, I get rid of, just say private irrigation, get rid of semi-public. So we just know exactly what this is about, and it's not about anything drinkable at all.
private irrigation water supplies may, not shall, may,
Makes it, right?
at the
Yeah, I did
discretion of the
that.
board.
Well, what does semi-public mean? I guess in my mind,
Correct.
I think
in my
like-
house, it's private, and at RGE, it's semi-public.
But if you share it with two, yeah, it is semi-public.
Actually, RG would
It's
not,
shared.
well, it depends. If it's more than 15 connections, I think it is, then it becomes a public. If
Okay,
it's fewer, then it's semi-private, and if it's just one, it's private.
okay,
So the DEP starts regulating it once it becomes public,
okay,
and that's why you're sitting here now, because,
yeah,
yeah.
but I guess, so hearing that explanation, I guess, do we want to remove semi-public or semi-private, or we want it to be only private? Cause it seems like that limits it more by making it solely private. And is that what we wanted? No.
I'm gonna take out. Surface water supplies for irrigation,
Well,
maybe further regulated.
well, this is driven by, we just recently had that applicant who wanted to do dual use.
Yeah,
Remember that?
yeah, good point.
And that's why. And I don't think it was really there. I think it was just simply prohibited. By the 91 code,
Yeah,
I believe. But again, does this not say, I mean, this version, it has to come in front of the board. For approval, if one wants to do that.
May say instead of may be prohibited, must be approved by the board.
I don't know, where's it? It's hard for me to see. Shall be approved by the Board of Health only after the applicant is submitted, right there, it's in there, in the red.
Fire, I can't type anymore.
Oh, that section you did, okay.
Yeah, surface water supplies for irrigation must be approved by the Board of Health. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, cisterns shall be prohibited. 9.3 cross connections for whatever purpose shall not be allowed without written permit from the Mass Department of Public Health and approval by the Mills Board of Health. Other prohibitions, wells used for drinking water, domestic water shall not be used to provide water for groundwater heat pump systems. For water cooling, air conditioning systems or irrigations. Any well used for such system shall be approved by the Board of Health only if the applicant has submitted evidence of satisfaction of the Board of, to the Board of Health. To the Board of Health.
No, to the satisfaction of the board.
Evidence to the satisfaction of the board, okay, so it is of, all right, of the Board of Health that such use.
Such use, to satisfy.
Satisfies manufacturers. Recommendations for proper equipment operation. And will not. Disrupt quantity quality of water from any nearby well. Missing the and.
I just want to point out,
And.
that actually, that last sentence has become a big deal in some communities.
Really?
Where some wells impact the operation of other wells, nearby wells. If you look at the model, I know it's in our file, and I'm sure you've read it many times in Framingham. There's a couple of pages just about that, because there was some significant issues there. Regarding one well impacting
I see a new well coming in and the existing well not functioning.
Correct. And so how do you protect the existing well and what's the impact? And in that code, just in case you're interested in looking at this, great thing to read at 11 at night with particularly, I think a dry white wine. It's, they call them junior wells and senior wells. And
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's because there was significant issues there. Anyway, it's not unheard of.
So it makes sense to disrupt the quantity, quality of water, any nearby well in there, that kind of.
What's that here?
So that's the last statement, will not disrupt any quality, quantity
Right.
of water from any.
So that, I didn't write that, but that's intent. That's the way I read it, is to
Fair enough,
protect nearby wells.
makes sense. All good? All right, enforcement, 10.1, the provision of Title I of the State Environmental Code should govern the enforcement of the regulations. 10.2, orders, service and content, I think that was left blank intentionally. 10.3, if any examination as provided for in section 1.4.3 and or 1.5.3 reveals failure to comply with the provisions of these regulations, Board of Health may order the person or company responsible to comply with the violated provision. 10.4, the inspection in these regulations cannot be construed as guaranteed by the town of Millis or its agents that the water system will function satisfactorily. 10.5, the Board of Health may require restrictions recorded in the Registry of Deeds in cases which, in the opinion of the Board of Health, the water analysis show marginal compliance with the criteria of these regulations. 10.6, the board may require treatment of the water analysis if the water analysis shows marginal compliance. Severability in any section, paragraph, sentence, clause, phrase of these rules, regulations held invalid and unconstitutional by a court of competent jurisdiction. Such portion shall be deemed a separate distinct provision. Such decision should not affect the validity of the remaining portions of these regulations, which shall remain in full force. In fact, at the end of the provisions of these rules, regulations are hereby declared serviceable. All right, so we got. Everyone feel comfortable with all the ones except the ones we wrote down. The 3.12, we're looking at pump houses for new references. 6.1, we want a new reference, basically the same pump house. It's the old EPA standard from 1973. We're trying for new references. 7.3, we're gonna look and see whether or not we want to add radon testing to drinking wells. And find the required testing methods for PFAS by the Mass DEP. What the suggested regulations for testing is. And 7.4, we're gonna double check that chart and add the missing chemicals that were discussed in the above paragraph. We're gonna look at the statement on the sodium content. And 7.7, we're gonna look at the statement about permanent disinfection prohibited and make sure that still makes sense in today's world. And for 9.1, we want to discuss surface water. Or are we happy with 9.1 now?
I'm happy with it, if you guys.
Okay, I think I'm happy with 9.1.
One thing I think we talked about that didn't finalize was, I don't know what the right word is, grandfathering, or I guess one of the provisions.
Testing
Yeah,
schedule.
testing schedule. Yeah. Use this only for new things, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Which is kind of why I was asking about cost, because I get it. Let's pretend it costs $3,000, which I don't think it does. I would hate to tell people you have to do this every so often. On the other hand, if you're at the same house for 40 years, probably not a bad idea, like periodically
Test your
to
water.
test your water. But I guess I just want to be sensitive for not placing too much on
Well, we could
people.
require, like, upon transfer of property and on new construction, but then
That I totally agree with.
recommend
We
like
could-
every 10 years. So then it's on the homeowner, but it's recommended by the Board of Health.
I would personally be comfortable with that.
How about you, Jakar?
And it's consistent with what the state recommends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think, one of the things about doing it every so many years is it would also capture if there's a significant shift in testing standards. That would allow us to kind of, help people catch up on, safer water, for themselves.
Well, I guess one question could be, sort of based on what you're saying, Jaypar, there has been I don't know, a change in our view on PFAS. Is that something that we would say, everyone really should test their well? I don't care if your well is 45 years old. This is something that you should look for specifically because it's new. I guess that's one way to look at it, right? And we could be very specific if we think those were the analytes that were important.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I can imagine if everyone with a well all of a sudden is told that they have to send testing out.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you were to do something like that, you should put it on a schedule to allow for flexibility of testing.
Well, yeah, and it makes it feel more fair, I think, if it's, a timed versus, kind of that sense of kind of pounced on just because something is now newly established versus saying, every 10 years and, subject to, again, if we keep languaging subject to Board of Health, whatever concerns, mandates, whatever. I mean, we can always come in and make things more conservative, but just to kind of build a rhythm of some sort in, I think is not a bad expectation to introduce.
If
You
I
could
can
highly
add,
suggest to homeowners, like, instead of say you're mandated to test for PFAS and all these different chemicals, it's highly suggested that people with private wells, drinking wells, test for these chemicals. So we're not forcing it, we're just kind of saying, hey, this is a problem and we should be looking at this.
Right, except for when you sell your house or whatever.
Yeah, except for when you're selling your house to a new person who's gonna come in. Yes.
And can you put on the things to tighten up, also just tighten up the language around when that happens, does that happen before sale by the owner? Does that happen within so many days by the buyer? So again, it seems less arbitrary for somebody who has to be responding to that.
They would require it anyway. Like if you're buying a house with a private well, wouldn't you want the water tested before you purchase the house?
don't always assume it.
No?
I don't assume anything of human behavior.
I'm dealing with one case right now where a property sale and the bank, both banks completely failed. And with all their attorneys and everything else, they,
If I may speak for a second,
Go ahead.
the PFAS, because of the 20 parts per trillion, that's what's gonna affect them. If we don't pass that, we could be a 21E site in theory.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of the homeowners are getting nervous about this,
Sure.
so.
If it tests over 20, then it's reportable to the state and that becomes a 21E site.
Yeah, so
That's why-
supposedly there was,
But I thought they were gonna help homeowners like remediate that, like weren't they helping with like the cleaning the water or the filtration?
yeah, going into the house. But it's, if it's, finding out what happened on the land and everything else becomes the problem. Why that, this happens.
I had another question.
What's that?
And again, somewhat similar to what you're asking, but, if you have sampling requirements that are mandated, let's say right now you only have the sampling requirements mandated with the new well, and that gets reported here to the Board of Health and you have it on file. The ones that, let's say you mandate, or require at time of property transfer, then would those also be filed here with the Board of Health? I think that that's so, I mean, it needs to be put in there. And it has to be an enforcement mechanism.
Oh,
So things like that.
Yeah.
Which are not there.
Well, and I also don't remember, it was probably in here, but there's something in here about appropriate like remediation if anything's found, right?
Yeah.
It's in there, okay. Sorry, it's really long.
but we got through it. We survived.
We have remediation of this?
There was a remediation.
Okay, good.
It was, right?
Believe
So
me.
it's- Yeah.
We can clarify.
That was my favorite chapter.
What I really want to be clear on, let's pretend someone buys a house and has a problem, that it's clear to them what they need to do. I don't want them to be like, thanks, guys, what do I do now?
They did that, DEP did their, checking of all the private wells, starting in 2020. And they did like 1,700, and out of that, 5% had 20 PPT. So just an example. You'd be looking at areas of the town that are near industrial areas would be a problem, mostly,
So that's like what,
You know what I mean?
or if the town of Harvard is doing,
right?
that's exactly what they're doing.
So you have Gaff in the center of town, which has a lot of chemicals. So any wells that go in that area, you can almost probably be worried that you'd be 20, maybe 30, whatever, maybe in that area. And hopefully in the more, less industrialist areas and you wouldn't get that.
I mean, Jack Carr, isn't that sort of what, the town of Harvard was doing? And you're muted.
Yes.
So you should look at the Harvard regulations and see what their model looks like, because that's essentially what they were struggling with.
Right. Well, and I'm gonna investigate, because when I was looking at the Groton ones, they make reference to the Neshoba Valley. So there's apparently a Neshoba Valley Consortium, where they've all coordinated Board of Health regs. So, I want to figure out what towns those are and what kind of things they've all kind of, but part of what they've, coordinated is the extensive, that list that I ran out about, fluoride, radon, et cetera, in testing of their wells. So, so I'll research that and send it over to John and Heather for distribution, since I can't directly share with you all.
Can I throw out another idea related, in that Matt had mentioned, well, what about, I would use the term readability or understandability of the codes. So you don't need to hire a lawyer or, find a 5-year-old to understand it. Many years ago, in an earlier incarnation of myself, I was working on some state regs on a committee, and we were confused and kept on being confused. So finally, we sent them out to 3 high school English classes. One in a urban area, one in a suburban, one in rural, across the state. This was a statewide reg. And went to a 10th grade English class, and we didn't finalize those regulations until they all were able to tell us what we were saying. And could they understand it without another adult, or could they understand it without an expert in the field? And sometimes it's a really interesting exercise to, what you write is what you've written actually in English and understandable.
Yeah.
And it helped us, learn and fine tune what we were doing. Anyway, just throwing it out there as
I think it's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
It's something as a scientist that I worry about a lot, because you get so involved in your world of acronyms and everything. You forget that. I guess it's the same for everything, right? It's the same in architecture and everything. You get your little world.
or law.
Oh, law, yeah.
All right, so that's the statement for, what to do with their, it only talks about volatile organic.
Yeah.
So we should probably address, like, if PFAS is found, like,
What made me think of it was the last guy that was here, and he knew what he wanted to do.
yeah, the reverse osmosis systems, yeah.
And so, maybe this is unnecessary. I just wondered if putting in something like,
I mean,
installation of the appropriate remediation system shall be required or whatever.
So that's for any,
For anything. Like if you have too much sodium, you gotta do something. I don't know what it is.
Something like filtration.
Yeah.
I don't know how you figure it out.
Well, you probably treat it with some sort of chemical that finds it.
I think it's osmosis.
Could be that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully whatever you do is not worse than just throwing
Just gonna say, like, what's the unintended consequences of that?
I've wondered over the years if people that drink caffeine-free stuff know that they're probably drinking quite a few chemicals, because you do an organic solvent exchange to remove the caffeine.
I'm no longer drinking seltzer.
Oh, really? I got some right here. I'm not worried.
okay, so when any component is,
You know what you should do? Sorry, you should get like Pellegrino from Europe and you'll be okay.
Oh, yeah.
be under 7.3. 7.2, 7.3.
It's expensive.
Yeah. Hey, you're paying for no PFAS.
That's, and the green bottle.
That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah,
And all
what
this
is it, what do you
direction.
do?
And I could have also imagined a scenario where an expert engineer comes in and says, hey, I can actually do something to the well rather than the whole house and could offer a variance.
Let me ask you a question. What's the definition of unsafe level?
Yeah, that might not be the right word, but I would say that exceeds the levels that have been
Being established.
identified by EPA.
Or established standards or something?
Established standards, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because unsafe could be, in my mind, it's unsafe and.
Outside of established.
Yeah, someone says they're not putting fluoride in their water.
Let me,
so
can I
it's
say
unsafe.
for a second? Cause the
I
20.
really love PFAS. I mean, just.
I know, right?
The EPA is lowering it to 4 parts per
Well-
trillion, and we may be exactly, they're trying to make sure that it goes out to every state.
Mhm.
So the 20 parts per trillion may be down to 4.
Okay.
I think it was 2 years, 2026 maybe. And we may be down that far from DEP. So, yeah.
I would hazard a guess that I would put my money on the fact that we don't know what EP is gonna do.
Right,
Given today's environment, I mean, that's where I would bet my money on.
Well, EPA, they're only doing PFOA and PFAS now. They
But who-
dropped all the
Right.
other.
But how might be different? I mean, I don't know. It really depends.
I thought you were gonna say we don't know that it'll exist in 2 years.
So that's true.
But I hear what you're saying, John. I think
It's
what
fine.
it is we'll have to monitor that and make.
We're gonna
relatively easy change.
Yeah, we could change it at any time.
Yeah. I hate to be more restrictive with
Right.
our data.
Yeah.
Look, you can change it every meeting.
Right, next
The
meeting.
20 parts per.
Do we still have to have a public hearing now on this? I don't remember the rules. We don't.
I don't think so.
No,
The only thing that's public is Title V. Title V is the only thing, if you change it.
Also,
you have to be public.
Okay.
also airborne, air pollution regs. You have to have a public.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow, I never knew that.
Do we have air pollution rates?
yeah, I don't think you do, but if you do.
Really?
Yeah, you also have to get approval from DEP.
I want to be part of that.
Believe it.
Does any
take care of
boards of health have that?
I've done it.
Yeah.
Alright.
And I got slammed by DEP.
Okay, so is everybody happy with all but 3.12 pump houses, 6.1, we need newer reference, also equipment. 7.3 radon testing and wells, we wanna possibly add that. PFAS testing methodologies. 7.4, double check that chart and add the missing components that were mentioned above, which are not in the chart. Sodium content statement, make sure that's still relevant today. 7.6, are we happy with 7.6 if we have the when any component listed in section 7.2 and 7.3 is detected outside established levels and appropriate whole house treatment system shall be installed? Does that cover what to do when any of these things happen?
I think we should change the word levels to limits, but otherwise.
Limits,
yes.
okay.
And I
Or
say that
established
because we need-
standards?
It could be that as well. I only use the word limits because it's in, like, the testing usually says like.
Yep.
That, but, I'm okay either way. I just thought levels was maybe a little vague.
Limits. Okay. All right, and then the last thing we were looking at was what they mean by permanent disinfection of polluted water supply.
Just a question, am I muted? Nope, I'm not muted.
I can hear you.
So wherever we say something has to be done.
Yeah.
How does that work? So if I'm the person that's now has to do a whole house treatment, I get to decide how long I take to do that? 5 years? 2
Put in
years?
time. Yeah.
So that's anytime we say something has to be done, if this is so, I think we need to put some sort of bracket on it.
I think we wanted to add.
Is that in the enforcement part later on? I can't remember.
Yeah, that's. Where's enforcement?
Right there.
Right there, okay.
But again, it doesn't have any,
So you're thinking more
Does Title I of the state environmental code have that sort of thing in there? Like, I'm just thinking about, like, John, you've had to enforce things on wells and stuff, and we haven't had to have specific language in here, so I don't know where that is.
well, your power there is not issuing a permit till we comply. That's your enforcement power.
That's a good point.
But here, this is different. So let's say they don't test for property transfer, or let's say they don't, let's say they come back with that test and it doesn't meet the standards.
Well, shows it.
It already exceeds the
Board of Health
standard.
may require restriction report on the register of deeds, cases where in the Board of Health of Water analysis showed marginal compliance with criteria or regulations, so you put something on their deed.
So I think that's important on registry of deeds, because it's the only way that those transfers, they will know about it. Because a lot of times, we don't even know about it until it's
Right.
done.
But I think Jaikar's question is a little different. So let's say the test results, they exceed the standards, exceed the limits. How much time do they have? Do they have 2 years? Do they have 30 days? To, bring it into compliance with some sort of a treatment system or some other kind of remedy?
Well, if we're just talking about new construction
Or
or,
we're not, we're also talking about property transfer, we're talking about other
Yeah.
things. So,
Is it acceptable to just put at the discretion of the board?
no. The way, let's say the state sanitary code works, let's say in housing, is very simple, it says within 30 days, unless for certain. Or there's no, well, actually now it says it has to be in 30 days other than, and that's it.
Okay.
But there are ways of, using your discretion, or it could come for
Maybe you could say like 30 days or at the discretion of the board.
something like that.
Or further, whatever, something like that. Yeah, that's a good point. I know Jack Cars over the years has always been worried about enforcement. I think she's right. I just never think of it.
I mean, because I like to drink water that doesn't meet standards. I mean, that's what I like to do.
And swim in it too.
And bathe in it. It makes me happy. So,
The ending of this would be a court.
well, it could be.
Because
anything.
you can't enforce someone on, for that reason, on fines, and people still don't do it.
Well,
Courts are the only thing that really,
sure.
you could use at the end.
Well, let me ask you a question. You have the fine, you have the right to write fines here in Millis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you already adopted that state statute that allows you to write fines. And you could put a second clause in there that says, either monetary penalty or in court. You could use either. And you leave it up to the discretion. So let's say something really egregious. Let's say it's a multifamily dwelling and the landlord refuses to repair. That's a
Well, first we have one,
picture.
we have one that comes in front of the board, and then the board can determine if they need court, if they don't listen to the board first.
Exactly. I'm just saying it gives you that broad authority depending on how you word it and how you draft it. And I don't even know if you have any multifamily houses here that are in wells. I have no idea.
I think for my guess right now, so I think we got about 150 drinking wells in town. I think there's 200 something total with irrigation wells in town. But we don't have it all because some of the older ones were not necessarily, we don't have it in our office. Because they're old from the
they might exist, but
1940s,
not reported anywhere.
1940s, 50s, 30s even and stuff like that, that are still being used.
And so in theory, if you make some of these changes, then capture those wells over time. I mean, there'll always be some you'll never capture, but the
Like
vast majority
festivals
will.
are changing up too.
Yeah.
Alright.
Back to my question, are there any multifamily dwellings here that are on well?
I don't think so.
Just curious.
But irrigation, maybe not drinking well.
Are there any single family homes that are rented that are wells. Just kind of.
I would assume there are, but I don't.
Okay, so the questions we wanna look at for next time, which we need to make we need to make a meeting.
Yeah.
Grandfathering of existing wells, testing schedules requiring testing for new construction, property sale and transfer. Recommend every 10 years of testing of private wells not already existing. Having some way to file the test results with the Board of Health, remediation question. Enforcement and timelines of that enforcement need to be added, and possible if there are gonna be any fines related to non-compliance. Those are things we're gonna work on for next time.
Is next time gonna be in 2 weeks then?
Yeah, what is it?
There's a lot of stuff to get within that time.
Yeah.
All right,
It's a lot of stuff.
well, we're good with everything else, we're just.
Yeah, I would be in favor of meeting in a couple weeks if we're trying to help Glen Ellen with their pool. I
Okay,
think for this, we would need a little more time to be sure.
okay.
Unless Ethan and John wanna clear their schedules to help with this.
Jeez,
I'm,
Ethan,
I'm away for the next 2 weeks. I'm out of the country. And if I do come back, I'm back on the 27th.
of July?
No, June.
June, right.
It's 2 weeks. I will. If I do come, yeah, it'd be my choice.
So let's try and
Oh, I'm
set
not
a
even looking,
meeting.
I'm not even looking forward to this. It's a stressful trip. Anyway.
All right, do we wanna? Monday or Tuesday, what do you want? June 30th, July 1st, one for the next meeting. And we'll try and get the Glen Ellen in first, the Glen Ellen pool. I think we could block off everything else and knock this out, or we just wait till the following.
I think we need to wait for the following,
Okay, so this will be like
We need the,
mid-July.
yeah.
yeah, we need Ethan.
We'll work on.
We'll work on some of these.
What if we did a thing where, on the 30th or 1st, we do only the pool, we do the meeting minutes that we're probably not gonna do at 9:42 at night.
Yeah,
And call it a day, and then we do a later one or early the next month and tackle this and whatever else.
that's fair.
Is that okay?
I'm good with that. You good, Car?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so we'll do a meeting for the pool. On. What's better, the 30th or the 1st? Monday or Tuesday?
If we do Monday, John's already there till 8 o'clock, so he doesn't have to come in another night.
We should do it Monday.
Yeah, I don't think we need the 220.
We might not need this giant
We don't,
room.
yeah, we don't need it, 'cause I think the one across from the DPW,
Yeah,
that office is one downstairs as well, I think, right?
yeah, but I don't think they have, do they have cameras and stuff?
They have cameras, yeah,
Okay.
they have cameras.
We're so crowded.
Might fit in that room.
Yeah, fine.
We'll move rooms. Okay, so the 30th at 6 o'clock,
That's Monday evening.
Monday, June 30th, yes. Alright,
Should anyway.
You're here June 30th?
I will be. I'm supposed to be back
Oh,
on the 27th.
27th, right?
I'm supposed to be back on the 26th. That's the schedule.
okay.
So by then I should be functional.
Alright, and we'll try and work on some of this. See.
And then, yeah, if there's anything that you decide that we need to talk further about, we could always do that. Instead of, like, we wouldn't wanna talk in detail, right, but if we had little things we wanted to verify or whatever, we can do that.
Well, I can like send Heather the list of the things we wanna look at. We all look at them. We know what we're talking about. Well. Just change these points. We don't need to go over everything again. We just
I want you to read the
go-
whole thing every time you do it.
Okay, all right, so 1.1.
That was my favorite section. I really like that.
Yeah, we take it. If you could send that to me.
Actually,
since
if
I
you
changed
combine,
it.
if you combine 1.1 and 1.3, now you got something. But,
Try it for next, I'll work with it.
yeah,
all right.
but 1.4, no.
Okay, so we got a June meeting. Do we want to make another meeting later on in the month where we're gonna tackle this, like? sometime in July. Sometime in July, how's July 14th? Just throwing it out there.
Isn't July 14th? Is that the state day? I don't know.
Can we have a board of health meeting on Steel Day?
Is that?
What?
14th, I will be gone.
Okay,
Well, that week I will be gone.
how about? The 7th is too soon, so the 21st? Twenty-first, good for you, Deco?
Of July.
Yep.
right?
That's good. I can do that.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we got two on the books. Do we have health agent appointments we had to do real quick?
Yeah, the health agents. Let's see,
We did that last time.
That's right.
Health agent appointments.
no, every
So,
every year at this time they do it.
Okay, all right.
See,
We can knock that out really quick. We'll get out of here before 10.
AM or PM?
I didn't say anything about that.
I'm really tired. Okay.
Health appointments, next agenda item.
This is.
Sure. That's changed.
okay. Here we are.
All right. Motion to approve the FY 26 agents for appointment to the Board of Health as listed on your screen.
So
These are all the same people from last year.
I think so.
Am I still on there?
Yeah, you're on there.
Okay. But what's student smoking?
This is the school, the principals.
Oh, it's not for
Yeah.
an agent to be a smoking student. Okay.
No, that's the school. They make sure they're not smoking.
I didn't know we had chicken rabbit people either.
Wait, are the chickens agents?
That's
or-
the
ACO.
yeah,
Yeah,
animal controls,
yeah,
animal control officers.
yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Who's the?
James White,
Is that from Natick?
huh?
Is that James White from Natick?
Yeah, Natick, he said he's in here.
What?
He's lived in, Millis for
Oh, he lives in
40
Millis?
years.
I didn't
40
know
years,
that.
yeah, he's lived in here for 40 years.
He's like,
I didn't know that
he's like
either.
really retired.
Yeah. He was on the board.
You have more agents than have
20
residents.
years ago.
Yes, we do. We're covered all bases. All right, can we make a motion to appoint the FY 26? We don't have to name everybody. All listed item, all listed individuals as Board of Health agents for Millis. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, how fast can you do director's report?
Oh, right, let's see what we got here. Let me see what we got.
I'm getting out of here by 10.
Let's see. Let's see, what is this?
We'll do the minutes next time. Oh, we got pool and we got minutes. They were great.
I am so tired.
All right, we got it done. Knock it out. Dean only has to come once, right?
No, this is. Okay, so.
You do it next time.
It's interesting.
There it is.
Some of the food inspections that were done. Between me and Angelo. So that, and then. L5 inspections. L5. Yeah. It's usually D boxes, which isn't too bad. Septic tests. This 140 Baltimore is gonna be another sieve test.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the one we
That's
went,
what
the one
you and I ran?
yeah, we ran that like about 3-4 months ago.
Yeah, in the winter.
Yeah,
It's-
but still, it's way up.
So you can't
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. It's gonna be,
That's pretty obvious, and the soil
Yeah.
types there are,
yeah,
it's not like the other one you had here, it's,
they're gonna have to
if you
fix,
just have groundwater, something's terribly wrong there.
yeah, they're gonna have to fix the well too.
Well, that's right.
The well's
because it's-
within
I remember.
50 feet, but it's
50 feet of it.
it's an old well. And it's going down into the ground and the water's coming all into it. And there's bugs all over it. They have to bring it up to 18 inches and like, make sure it's,
Well, it depends where they site the septic system as well.
well, the
I mean,
only
that's
place
a-
they can do it now is on the side. The other side we looked at that day. It was
Well,
like,
there was snow and ice on the ground then, it was kind of
Yeah.
hard to,
right,
but yeah. I remember that. That's a barren site.
oh yeah.
That's really tough.
Um,
Absolutely. That's not an easy thing.
No.
That's not an easy site to feel. I'm surprised years ago the septic system even worked. Or the cesspool.
was in Cam. It's easy. And
We shouldn't be talking about that here.
planes,
Noise.
noise, Roche Brothers. I'm
Yeah, what
dealing
was-
with that, huh?
What was it factors of flood?
Roads and mice. I went there, they had a problem, and I had some. Having a pest control person get back to me on what's going on around there. So they got a new manager in there,
Oh, okay.
specifically because of it. They had to get a new manager down there,
Oh, wow.
so,
I will say I live close to Rush Brothers. I hear them especially at night. I'm not entirely sure, well, okay, I actually don't know it's Rush Brothers. I know it's that area. It sounds like trucks loading and unloading, but I have no idea. It's never bothered me enough that I thought to bring it up, so I'm curious if it's related to that or if it was like a specific incident.
Roche Brothers is the most noise. That we have a problem with, so,
I live near Roach Brothers in West Roxbury, but I don't hear much.
You don't hear anything?
No.
yeah.
I also sometimes think it's kids just messing around, so I'm not, it's not always clear what it is. Never enough to bother me.
Or maybe it's your particular branch of Roach Brothers.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, so that was the report.
so. I don't think there's any, we have some, we've had last meeting and the meeting before to go over those. Are you gonna plan on doing that now, or, what is it called? Hold on, let's see. Meeting minutes,
We're gonna do the next time.
Yeah, I don't want to speak either, but.
meeting minutes
I'm
for
not gonna
April
do-
7th and May 21st. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll have this next time too.
Well, during the meeting, do the pool, and we'll do the 3 meeting minutes.
Yeah.
We'll get them all approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, okay, all right. Oh,
Okay, I make a motion that we close the Board of Health meeting. For June 11th at 9:53 PM. Do I have a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
aye.
And then they go.
Where's George?
okay, good night, everyone.
Good luck.
Right.